Good evening, everyone. This is the Johnson City Board of Commissioners Agenda Review Meeting for December the 14th, and I call it to order. We are holding the meeting electronically according to Governor Lee's executive orders, and the video of this meeting can be seen on our website in review. Assistant Manager Charlie Stahl and Assistant Manager Bob Wilson will be hosting the meeting tonight from the staff standpoint. And Charlie, could I get you to call the roll, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Murphy?
Here.
Commissioner Hunter?
Here.
Commissioner Fowler?
Here.
Vice Mayor Wise?
Here.
And Mayor Brock?
Here. And Charlie, there are numerous people on the call tonight that I don't think I have a comprehensive agenda on those discussion items. So if anybody has that, or Bob, you have it, if you could maybe send it, or I'll defer to you to call up at the next item. Okay.
We'll send it to you, but let me just run through it. We have the various items are, we have an update from Boyd Sports, which I'll explain in a bit, is our contractor for the Johnson City baseball team, formerly known as the Cardinals. We have the explanation of a contract for new software ERP award with Lisa Bob, GFOA consultant, and others. We have a discussion with final payment and reconciliation of a contract with Brazil Construction with Tom and Sonny. Update on the tattoo policy with Chief Turner. Mobile food vendor policy, Sonny Sandos. Title 8 beer ordinance 4755-20 with Sonny. And we have a discussion of the entrepreneurship funding agreement, and discuss a request from Dr. Cooper about city initiating a rezoning of property owned by David Myers on Mayfield Drive with Preston Mitchell, and just a general discussion of pending board appointments, which, as you know, are semi-annual now in January and July. So that's what's the general items are tonight for discussion.
Mayor, there's also one more item. It's in the agenda, but we want to make sure we talk about the Tri-Cities legislative policy, and that can go at the end, since it will just be us talking about it. There's nobody else on the line for that. We've got some folks on the line for the ERP, the software, and I think so I know they're on the line, and I think there's some other folks on the line maybe for the economic development item that's on there.
And also Boyd Sports as well.
Boyd Sports, yeah, and for Boyd Sports. Yeah.
Bob, are the ERP people, is this included in the price, or is this a per hour?
It's included in the price.
Okay, well, I'm just curious.
We already paid for it, so.
All right. Well, before we dive in, and we're going to have to dive in the agenda, I want to welcome Commissioner Murphy. This will be your first official meeting, I guess, after the swearing in last week. So we want to welcome you aboard, and roll up your sleeves. That's all I can say. We've got a lot on the agenda tonight, but a lot for next year as well. So
Thank you.
all right, Charlie, we will turn it over to you, or Bob, whoever's going to introduce the next item.
Mayor, I'd like to introduce Boyd Sports, which most of the commission may recall. Nearly 5 years ago, we entered into a agreement with Boyd Sports to operate the minor league, the Johnson City Cardinals, which we've had a great working relationship with Boyd over the past number of years. Of course, you have here tonight Chris Allen, the president, Jeremy Bowler, the vice president, and of course Zach Clark, who most of you know directly, is the general manager of the team, and he is based here in town. And most of you also been reading about the fact that the Major League Baseball has elected to eliminate some rookie league funding, and basically in an agreement with the Appalachian League has entered into an agreement to form a collegiate summer baseball league that operates, of course, all the Appalachian League teams have signed on to that, to my knowledge, and this is designed for rising freshmen and sophomores using wooden bats. And the season runs from June to August, similar to the rookie league. It just starts a little earlier in June and ends a little earlier in August. But this league is part of Major League Baseball and USA Baseball's prospect development pipeline. So we've asked Chris and his team to come tonight just to give you a kind of a general overview of where they're at and where they hope to go. So Chris, I'll throw it to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Yeah, basically, well, Charlie pretty much hit the nail on the head there. We many of you guys know Major League Baseball, minor league baseball went through a rough year, as we all did, of course, with the pandemic. But contraction was something that was on the docket for minor league baseball a little over a year ago. Early on, we realized quickly that the Appalachian League was going to be no more. We tried our best to save the league and try to keep our pro teams in position. But when they go from 160 teams to 120 teams, we knew the lower levels were going to be in jeopardy. And that's exactly what happened with the Appalachian League. Luckily for us, we had a good relationship and maintained a strong relationship with Major League Baseball. And our league president, Dan Mushan, did a very good job keeping the conversations positive. And that's when this Summer Collegiate League was developed. It's going to be the only league in the country that's supported financially and as well as a number of other opportunities through Major League Baseball and USA Baseball. We'll have the patch. We'll be certified, and we're one of there's no leagues right now currently that's going to be doing this except us. There'll be another league added down the road, possibly the Pioneer League. But with that said, it's really our only option to continue baseball and have affiliation with Major League Baseball. So that's it's a positive. It's going to be run just like the minor league team. There should be really no change other than instead of 18, 19-year-old professional players, we'll have 18, 19-year-old collegiate players. In many cases, I think our product and our level of play will get better. This is supposed to be some of the best talent in the country. There's looks to have a draft on the MLB Network for our spots on our team. I know I'm on the steering committee with a number of other baseball executives at Major League and USA Baseball, where they've already have 200 kids already signed up for this league, and you have to be vetted. So you have to be a top player in the country to make it in this league. So it should be a lot of fun. We're happy to continue bringing quality entertainment to the community. As you guys know, we have 3, possibly soon to be 4 teams in the Appy League, and of course we have our AA team with the Tennessee Smokies here in Kodak and Knoxville area. So we're excited, but then again, we're a little bit sad too because there's a lot of teams that lost their affiliation, not just us, but a lot of other teams in the industry. So it's on top of the pandemic, it's been an especially bad year for our industry. Outside of any other updates to throw in there, lease, Charlie, we talked about possibly changing the verbiage in the lease from professional to collegiate. That's what we're going to be asking for. I don't know whether we do that tonight or down the road. Something, Charlie, you might want to hit on, but that's kind of what we're looking to do. And then I'd like to come back in January and talk about some improvements to the ballpark that we're looking to bring. With the contraction, that was part of the contraction throughout Major League Baseball, was a lot of the lower level teams that financially didn't have the wherewithal or the ability to improve their facility, which really didn't play into consideration in Johnson City because both the city and Boyd Sports had put a considerable amount of money in that facility. So that really wasn't a factor. But unfortunately for a lot of teams in our league, that is the situation. They just didn't have the money to bring their facility up to standard. We're still going to have to improve our standards. But with that said, in Johnson City, we're a lot farther along the way than some other teams in our league. So it's some things that we'll share with you as we get past the first of the year. We're still waiting to sign our final contract with Major League Baseball and USA Baseball, but that should be happening in the coming weeks. We're working on team names and logos, and basically Zach's doing everything he normally would be doing, except it's just going to be for a summer collegiate team this coming season.
Mayor, what Chris is referring to in the lease agreement, the city commission entered a 10-year lease agreement back in 2016. So we're halfway into that lease, and what he's referring to in terms of updating the lease agreement right now, the current lease references Johnson City Cardinals, professional baseball, terminology that's dealing with minor leagues. So this would be sort of an update of the existing lease. I presume, discussion about the extension of the lease term is probably of an interest to Boyd Sports, and as he mentioned, facility, what he envisions or Boyd Sports envisions to be facility improvements in the year and ahead and beyond. So if I missed anything, Chris, please jump in.
No,
Well,
that's it.
No, as y'all get through that, then we'll look forward to you coming back and giving more details. Let me just ask one quick question, Chris and Zach. How do you plan to market this so you get your spectators back and they like what they see?
We'll continue to do the exact same thing we've done in the past. As you know, our Cardinal team there was one of the most attended ball clubs in the Appalachian League. We're always in the top 2 or 3, really in number 1 there one year. We've always done really well. We got a great community. We're going to continue to have all of our promotions, our giveaways. It's really, if you are not paying attention to baseball and you just come over there once or twice a year for entertainment and you don't follow baseball at all, you're probably not going to know the difference. It's going to continue to operate the exact same way. That's it. It's just, we're not going to change a thing really, because we've had a lot of success as far as getting the crowd out there. So we're going to try to continue the same plan.
Any sneak peek on what our name might be?
Zach, you can do that. There's a bunch of names thrown out there, but Zach, I'll let him talk on that.
Yeah, we're working through that right now. So back at the turn of the century, the original name of the professional baseball team was the Johnson City Soldiers. So that was one of the ideas that we started with, which then morphed into the Johnson City Doughboys. We got into that because of the statue, the Spirit of the American Doughboy, right here at Memorial Park, that honors all of the fallen veterans of all of the major conflicts that the United States have fought in. But it also honors, obviously, our military, past and present, and it's kind of a nod to the name that we had at the turn of the century with our original professional baseball team. So it used to be the Soldiers, and then it was the Cardinals, Phillies, Yankees. So outside of those 4 names, we've never had any other name, and we've been the Cardinals since 1975. So we're very, very excited to honor our community, honor our military, and move forward with the Johnson City Doughboys.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you a lot.
That's a great.
Commissioners, any other questions?
I was going to say, Zach, that's a great name. But one of our commissioners is pretty big into sports here locally, and I thought we might see it called the Fowlers.
That would have been fun. That would have been fun.
That would be a bad name for a baseball team. Sorry.
Actually, John, you've been making a lot of bread. The Doughboys is kind of to name it in your honor.
That's exactly right. That's what
that's our biggest fear is people refer to the Doughboys as the Pillsbury Doughboy. That's
right.
I mean,
so Chris, you alluded to, I think, 4 teams in the Smokies. Does that mean there are 4 teams in the reimagined Appalachian League that have already kind of started to figure out how they would exist after the change?
No, basically the 4 teams I refer to are the teams will operate in the Appalachian League. As you may or may not know, we operate Johnson City, Elizabethton, and Greenville, and we're in discussions now to operate Kingsport, which is really just a perfect dynamic right there in that little Tri-City area. So those are the 4 teams will operate in the Appalachian League, and our AA team is in the Southern League still.
So do we envision that the teams, the communities that had teams previously, we envision still having teams in this new arrangement?
Yes, all 10 teams are coming back for the Summer Collegiate League, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
My orthopedic group, myself mostly, has been taking care of the Cardinals and the Twins for many years, and I took care of the Bristol White Sox before they got bought out by the Pirates also. And we have groups in Bristol, Kingsport, and Johnson City. So we kind of be interested in talking to you again about the sports medicine coverage, but I'll talk outside this meeting with you sometime soon, hopefully.
Absolutely. I will say I'm one of the only guys in the league on the steering committee with USA Baseball. And believe it or not, your agency, your company was brought up. So I expect you'll get a call from USA Baseball real soon.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Well, it's exciting. We certainly hope that come spring, we'll be coming out of all of our shutdowns and we may be able to see some baseball. That'd be great.
Well, Mayor, opening day is June 3rd, so you've got until then to get your arm warmed up.
It's always warm.
You know,
it's always warm.
The honorary First pitch of the new look Doughboys will be firing off June 3rd. So hope you're ready for that.
Well, you just remember I have a golden retriever, so it's always warm.
Yeah, you're ready to go.
Well, thank y'all so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
All right. Merry Christmas to y'all. Mhm.
Thank you. Mayor, the next item I'm going to throw it to Bob is the explanation of the contract for the new software for the city. Bob?
Okay, thanks. I've got Lisa Sagona is also sitting in on this, and Eva Olsaker from GFOA. So I'll hit the highlights on this proposal, and then we can just open it up for questions. Hopefully you were sitting down when you read this, but after getting into this, it's been quite the experience. And I'll just share with you, I was avoiding this like the plague. I was hoping I would be gone before this came up, but it's been a very interesting, highly educational experience, and it's turned into a good project. We have a great review team of IT, finance, budget, HR, purchasing, solid waste, public works folks that were on this. Everybody did a great job with this. We've got 13 proposals, and that's a very large number. Is a great response to our RFP. It was kind of daunting. The proposals were pretty long, like I'd mentioned in here. So it was quite a bit of work just to go through it, but the team went through it, looked at all the proposals and slowly narrowed it down. We got down to 2 that we interviewed and brought in for on-site demos and discovery, and then narrowed it down to Oracle and DRT, which is they contract with Oracle and do their contract work for them. So that's kind of how we got there. We also have involved in this, we have some other agencies. There's Can-Am Technologies or Teller. That's part of the cash collection, not credit card, but cash collection and checks. So all of our utility bills, and we'll be running through that, and all the property tax and cash collections. We also have GovCollect, which is involved in the property tax billing and collections and tracking. As we got into the software, we found out that more of the new age software is designed to integrate. And very few companies do everything. A lot of companies will find someone that specializes in certain things, and they'll do the core part, but they'll let the other company do the specialty work. And across the country, there's a lot of cities that don't do property tax. It's done by the county, and then the county will actually collect the money, and then they'll submit it over to the city. So we'll have agreements with DLT and Oracle, GovCollect, Can-Am Technologies, and High Street. High Street is really the implementer. They're the ones that submitted the proposal, and they're the ones that will be here on site with us working to implement the new software. You've seen the proposal. The first year cost in total are around 3.3 million. About 2.9 of that will go to High Street. They're doing the heavy lifting and will be with us here on site and online to implement this. And the others are for the ERP side through Oracle, and also GovCollect and Can-Am Teller. We do have some savings on this that over the next 5 years could approximately $250,000. We'll be going to the cloud. So the good thing about the cloud is it's a lot more efficient. There's a lot of economies through that. Oracle has a lot of experience with this. It'll be more secure. We will have better disaster recovery. We'll have on-site. We'll have off-site storage of our backup. So that's three big things that will benefit from this. There's also a number of items, I saw them in there, but with a modern HR software, our new onboarding new employees will be faster. Employees can do more. They'll be able to look up information that they previously had to call HR for. They'll be able to make changes. On the financial side, departments will have access to budget and expenditure data at the touch of their hands. They won't have to call up HR, so that'll be very convenient for them. A lot of purchasing will be a lot more efficient. It'll be more, the approval process will be expedited. Our payroll process will be more expedited. There's just a number of other enhancements. So there's a lot of improvements that we'll see with this. And there's a lot that we don't know. Once our staff gets into it, gets using it, they'll see efficiencies that we're not even aware that we're going to get right now. So there's a lot of buy-in. The entire review team has bought into this. The departments, I think, are getting excited. It'll kind of be like the Nike, logo: no pain, no gain. But the pain will be worth it. So I've kind of hit some big picture items. I don't know if you want to get into questions about more specifics. Lisa, Eva, if there's anything, big things I've left out, if you want to touch on that or expound on anything or correct anything, feel free to jump in.
I'll just jump in just real quick and introduce myself. My name's Eva Olsaker. I'm with GFOA, as Bob had mentioned, and I'm with the Government Finance Officers Association. And so we obviously worked with the city through the kind of the entire process. And, just in general, it's been a pleasure working with Bob and Lisa and the entire team. And when Bob had mentioned these different kind of teams that were developed, from our standpoint, that's essentially best practice because you're engaging lots of individual and stakeholders from throughout the organization. And the idea is that multiple people are kind of involved with the process. And so kind of knock on wood, from a change management perspective, you have a lot of staff who have been kind of involved with the process. So we envision, because of some of the readiness and preparation activities that the city kind of embarked on, it should kind of be a little bit easier. That these projects are hard work, but the city's already kind of done some of the heavy lifting to prepare the organization. So from our perspective, we've been, very pleased to work with Bob and Lisa and the team and throughout the entire process. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have as well. I mean, Bob explained it, pretty well, but just wanted to introduce myself and say hello.
I would love to just add something quick, and thank you so much, Eva, and great job, Bob, giving that overview. Just to add to that, also welcome to our new commissioner. Haven't had the pleasure of working with you, but glad to have you here. One thing that I think is critical is that going with a modern software is going to allow us to integrate, Bob touched on that, with so many other enterprise applications and with things that we haven't even thought of for the future. So this meets our needs for many, many years down the road. And, Bob was hoping he wouldn't be here to do this. And so was I. No, I'm just kidding. I'm really excited about it. I think we've got a really great staff who have been asking indirectly for this for many, many years. You talk about workforce collaboration and how you retain really good people. And part of that is developing ourselves and certainly developing the tools that we give people to do those jobs we spend a really long time at. So having a modern technology as a tool for people to do their jobs, I think is something they've been asking for. And so people are really excited. We're going to have amazing product champions who have already looked at videos and whatnot. So we're just really excited to get started. So with approval, we'll get to start on January 1, and we're super excited about that.
So Lisa, just a couple of questions. This is probably one of our larger single big ticket items, that we've had before us in a while. And this is basically the core of it's financial software, but as you're indicating, it's going to be able to integrate with hopefully all other departments so that when a work order gets closed out in Public Works and there's a charge to it, it appears, somewhere in the software that, everything can be reconciled very quickly with the touch of a button, I suppose.
Yes.
In choosing this particular one, did you do a lot of, I know through your committee, you probably looked at other software packages and all. So how does this, from a price standpoint, stand up to other systems we could have gone with?
Absolutely. So Bob talked about how many we had. And so we had a range of pretty inexpensive and very rigid on-premise applications all the way to cloud applications. This is probably the fourth most expensive. So there were 3 more expensive, 2 of which we didn't even look at. And this falls right in line with what we anticipated. I expected it would be $3 million just for that first year. And then of course you've got your maintenance and everything that kind of comes into play. So I think that Oracle, what they did, so we looked at 2 applications, Oracle and Workday, and it was a unanimous decision, but it wasn't an easy one. We went back and forth for a long time after demonstrations and discovery and requests for clarification and reference checking and tons of work with GFOA, looking at everywhere we want to go, where we are now, how we can change our business processes to make those more efficient. That doesn't come at a cheap cost. In order to have the efficiencies that we will enjoy in the future, that's going to cost some money. So it looks like a lot of money, but I try to remind people that it's a pay as you go or get stuck in the past and pay a lot to get where you need to be. So we didn't do anything with our software for the better part of 20 years. That's not going to be inexpensive to switch. I think the bigger concern that people forget about are those efficiencies that are hard to put dollars and cents on. Things like getting rid of so much paper, electronic signatures, having mobility. A workforce today does not want to send a piece of paper to 5 different people and chase it around all day. That's just not that's not who we're hiring today. And it also sets us up to be an innovative city where we focus on innovation, education, and collaboration. And we haven't been able to do that. We haven't been able to truly see a capital project in water sewer from the very start to the very end without doing a lot of ancillary work in between. And so we're going to have really good data to make decisions and to make quicker decisions and to be able to really understand how to analyze. We've always done a great job collecting data, but we haven't always closed the circle. So, Mayor, to answer your question, it's pretty pricey, but it's not the most expensive. And what Oracle did, and Eva, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. If this was 10 years ago, they wouldn't have even been in the market. They would not have responded to us. The minimum is 1,000 employees, 1,000 FTEs, I should say. And even though we're up 900 and some with our part-time and temp and seasonal, it really does push us over. So Oracle took a look at that government model and education K through 12 and really found their niche and priced it to the point where they were cheaper than 4 others. And we picked it for a reason because we think they're the best in the business. Okay. Workday did a great job. I think Workday does an excellent job also with for-profit entities. I think they've got a really good start with government entities, but we just felt Oracle met our needs better.
Just a real quick comment on the cloud and security.
So first and foremost, we want to partner with a company who is using their own data centers and backing up to multiple locations around the world. We don't want to enlist a partnership with somebody who's using Amazon's services or Microsoft's services. Because if they're not big enough and the best in the business, then I still get nervous. So for us, security was one of the biggest reasons to pick Oracle, and how all of its services are laid out to work with our internal network, how that works. And there's a whole bunch of technical stuff behind the scenes that make that work. And then how that disaster recovery, how you get access to your data, how you're sure that it's secured. And, you know, we've got Department of Defense who, you know, uses things like this. We know that this is the most secure way to go. We also know that we finally stay at a modern level. So we're the most secure, and everyone is using the same version, and we're not allowing customizations that every time there's an upgrade or an update, we are set back so much and we have to redo all of our customizations. So we know that this is not just a secure, it's not just about security, but it's about consistency and ensuring that the company who wrote it, who knows what they're doing the upgrades rather than us struggling through those.
Commissioners, are there other questions?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
That's okay.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that presentation. You done a wonderful job. I do want to make mention, when in the context of making sure that we can serve all age demographics or employee demographics. I know hiring for tomorrow is very important, but we do have those who may not be as technologically savvy. And so finding a way to transition, finding a way to have, you know, the best of both worlds and not just 100% digital, because that does not always work best for all employees.
Absolutely. You are 100% correct. We will probably have 5 different ways that somebody can check their leave balances. You know, there'll be kiosks. There'll still be people who are looking at a piece of paper. There will be people who do it on their phone. Other people don't have smartphones, don't have tablets. Maybe they'll use a website. They feel comfortable with a computer, but they don't have any mobile devices. There's going to be, that's just it. We have to make sure that we are covering from those people who are real comfortable to those people who have never typed a document on a computer in their lives. You know, we've got people who work in water, sewer, and public works who don't want anything to do with that. And that's why we'll make sure, no matter what, that we hold every kind of training, every sort of work group, multiple ways to do something, give people access to a small kiosk in their area, make sure that they have individualized training. We expect to have an individual help desk only for the ERP rollout. The goal would be to have one dedicated number to help people, whether it's looking at a W-2, printing out maybe you know, a pay stub, or just learning how to punch in. So the goal for us in IT is to have a dedicated person and number to those individuals, and to make sure that, you know, you've got a little card that you can put in your wallet, so you don't have to rely on technology. You'll have that number. You can pull it out of your wallet, for example, if you forget. So I appreciate the comment. And we have been doing this for 30 plus years and have always had to make sure that it's a very fine line, a very careful balance between those that are afraid of it and those that really embrace it. And, you know, we make sure we're never on the bleeding edge. We like to be a little more on the cutting edge than we are now. But we paid our dues to get here. We've got wonderful business processes, but they'd be much more efficient if we didn't have to do all the things that we have to do manually.
Something I would just add to that comment is what we envision is that in each department, we'll have one individual that will kind of be the go-to person. So that if it's time to enter your pay, if it's, you know, stuff, your pay information for that pay period, and you have questions, you can go to this individual and then they can walk you through the steps and help you do it. So that's just one example. I mean, if there's other, if you need to go beyond there, there'll be other people, as Lisa said, but we want to have some kind of in-house experts, if you will, around in all departments. Something we didn't talk about, but I'll just let you know, this is something that we intend to work with our communications and marketing staff to let people know it's coming.
Yep.
So when this is approved, assuming it is, then one of our next newsletters will be kind of putting this out there to let staff know. And so every month or two, there'll be some article so that everyone knows it's coming and is aware of what's going on. So we're just trying to build some excitement for it and also some anticipation of what's coming up.
Absolutely. And so we did talk about having a page dedicated to this in the employee newsletter kind of infinitely, because there'll be so many new ways of doing things, but also making sure that we're not forgetting the people side of things and making it fun and, giving away some awards, possibly doing some sort of scavenger hunt. But we're super excited about working with people in each department and not choosing those people who always get chosen just because they never say no, but really finding the product champion, the person that gets excited about this kind of thing. So in one department, it might be this type of person. Maybe it's a firefighter in another department. But we've seen a lot of it already and people are excited to help it and want to be part of it.
So Lisa, remind us again, when will it be fully implemented if it's approved?
Yes, so if all goes well and there's not another unforeseen incident like we've had this year, it will take the full part of 1 year. So it would begin on January 2nd of 2021 and it will be finished on January 2nd of 2022. So
Okay.
a year. We hope to have the property tax rolled out, at least I hope so, to have a more modern way to help our citizenry and all of the people who public utility tax, to have a more modern way to deliver property tax. Maybe that'll happen a little bit before the year begins. We're hoping that maybe next year we could do our property tax in the new way, but we're making no promises. We're hopeful, but definitely the better part of a year unless unforeseen things happen. We're very nervous about planning for contingent things, whether it's, staffing, turnover, pandemic, things you can never count on, but we're hopeful. We know it can be done in a year. We're hopeful we can do it.
Very good. Thank you.
And by
Commissioners,
the
any other
way, I think we should
Yes, sir.
acknowledge Lisa's very festive background.
I did.
All the rest of us lose the background competition.
Thank
We
you.
crown you as our champion.
I just
Well,
hope
I come
Fran
in
didn't
close. Look
steal
at my
it.
poinsettia.
Well, that's
Oh,
true.
very nice.
Honorable mention for the poinsettia, but you don't have candy canes.
That's exactly right.
So,
And I would just
There you-
point out, since we're talking about software, when we looked at this part essentially handles financials, HR, which includes payroll, purchasing, and budgeting. I think we talked about those, but that's the main areas it's including. We'll be coming back to you sometime in the first quarter of next year with utility billing for water, sewer, solid waste, and stormwater. It won't, the shock factor won't be as bad as this one is, but we've got that narrowed down to 2 funds and we're working through that. So the time frame is a little slower, so we're not on the we're on a different time frame with that project, but just as an FYI, that will be coming next year.
So Bob, I guess our final question is, what is our funding source?
Funding source, great question, Mayor. The primary funding source is bonds. The bonds that we issued last week for a phenomenal interest rate. I think the average was 1.157 or 58. That's up to $3 million, and that will take care of the high street work. The bonds right now are about that portion of the cost is about 2.9 million. The other part of that, the balance, will be paid through primarily the general fund, but the teller cost, like in this example, our first year for teller, Can-Am teller is $114,000. Our utility funds will also be sharing in that because they will, the vast majority of all transactions that will flow through that will be for utility payments. Obviously, the property tax payments will flow, but it'll primarily be that. So we'll charge those funds. So that's in the first year, that's about $434,000 of other costs. But 275 will be to Oracle, 45 to GovCollect, and 114 to Cam Teller.
Okay, so basically bond funds and then some ratepayer funds through the utilities will pay the cost of this.
And the general fund.
And the general fund, okay.
Some of the items that Lisa has, some of those will go away. Some of them they won't go away this year, but they will go away once we get implemented.
Okay.
And then some of the things that we've been working on that we haven't done, that's where the extra cost is. But the average cost for this in total cost for years 2 through 5, it's not a cheap date, but we're looking at about $336,000 a year. That's probably $40,000 more. But then there's things that we're not doing that we should be doing that will cover that. We'll also have more efficiencies that we'll gain. But there will be some additional costs to the general fund on this. But
All right.
We'll be okay this year.
Mayor,
I think yes, sir.
Bob, you may have touched on it and I missed it, but so you mentioned the phenomenal rate on the bond issuance. I think we had projected a higher rate previously, correct?
We had I think our bond council folks had thought it would be around 1.2, maybe 1.25 or in that range. So it was below that. We were really thinking it would be more in the 1.5, 1.75, no more than 2 at the very highest. Trying to be conservative with that. So we were very, very pleased.
Have you calculated the difference? And you may not have that off the top of your head, but what that cost savings between what we were conservatively budgeting and the 1.1?
No, I have not.
Okay.
We could try to run some numbers and get that out.
I was just curious. No big deal. Thanks.
You're welcome.
If you have to, it's a good time to borrow money for sure. Yeah, for these long-term things.
I know a few good lenders if you need one. Just
Are there any other questions on the software? Okay, Lisa, thank you so much, and thanks you and Bob for all the work. I know you've been working months and months on this and have a great team in place. So
Thank you very much, guys.
thank you greatly.
Appreciate the attention. Thanks, Eva, for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay, Charlie.
The next item, we have a discussion of the final payment and reconciliation of a contract with Frizzell Construction. Tom Witherspoon and Sonny Sandoz can comment on that item.
And Charlie, after this one, why don't we move the entrepreneurship on up?
Okay.
Some of them in the middle there just are staff things.
Okay. Sonny.
Hey, can you hear me okay, Charlie?
I did, yeah.
Okay, very good. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. I won't repeat or read the information that's in your packet. I think there are a couple of things that need to be pointed out just as highlights. The project is, the total for the project, and we'll talk about what the project was, is about 11.4 million. The final payment you're being asked to approve is 161,000 and change. And then the final balancing change order for the work. The things that are highlighted or that need to be highlighted, this project actually started with bids in the fall of 2005. So we're a good piece down the road for closing it out. The contractor actually demobilized from the site in fall of 2019. So basically over the past year, we've been working on some type of resolution to the contract itself and also resolution to an equipment issue that we had. This project involved two of the three city own wastewater treatment plants. There were a number of processes that were replaced or upgraded as a result of the project, and those are listed in your packet. I won't read those. When we did open bids in the fall of 2015, we got excellent bids. We had, I think, 7 bidders on one of the phases and 6 bidders on the other phase. Frizzell was out of Bristol, Tennessee, was the low bidder. They were awarded both contracts. The contract time allowed 700 days for substantial completion, and the work began in March of 2016. So on the good news, the project was delivered effectively. All of the parts, pieces, buildings, mechanical units were all installed. They will meet the long-term service of the city and our customers. The 2 negatives as far as this project was concerned was some of the commissioners that have been on for a while had met Mr. Sipe. He was a city employee that was overseeing our capital improvement program. He was doing the inspection on this project. We got about a year into the project, and unfortunately, he was diagnosed with a very severe health issue and passed away within about 10 days of going into the hospital. So we were left without anyone to inspect that on the city staff. We then went ahead and amended our agreement with the engineer, CDM Smith, to provide those inspection services. So the first negative was the unfortunate circumstances with Mr. Sipe. The second negative was that we had to actually engage with the engineer, which is not unusual for a lot of communities. We just had appropriate staff that usually could provide that inspection at a cost savings. So we engaged with CDM Smith. The project, as I mentioned, was delivered by the contractor. The contractor left the site again in fall of 2019. When he left the site, there were 2 outstanding issues, demobilized from the site rather. One, part of the processes installed involved replacement of sludge dewatering equipment, which is critical at our Brush Creek wastewater treatment plant. He had yet to be able to get, he or the manufacturer had yet to be able to get that equipment to perform to specifications. So originally that equipment was defined as being defective. Since the fall of 2019 through July of 2020, our staff worked with the contractor and manufacturer and engineer. I will tell you that ended up being a success story. The equipment finally was fine-tuned, a number of modifications, not physical modifications, but just in the feed rate of some of the chemicals and the operation of the equipment. So the equipment in June, July of 2020 did in fact meet specifications. So it was approved by all the parties. So we got over that hump. So that was not going to be a contentious issue. The final remaining issue was that obviously the contractor delivered the project significantly late. And most of y'all that have been involved in discussions with different types of construction contracts, there usually is some kind of penalty for that to occur. I would not provide legal advice by any means, but there's also a consideration about in those situations whether the city has been damaged or whether there is no damage. If Mr. Sipe had been able to continue inspection, we really wouldn't have had any out-of-pocket cost as a result of the contractor finishing the project late. Unfortunately, based on that time period, we had to make repeated amendments to the engineer's contract for inspection. And those totaled about $497,000 for those additional amendments beyond the 700 days. The other positive about the project was that in your packet are the numbers. It was originally awarded at $11.8 million. There was one, there were a number of field orders and one change order that the commission approved at about 70-something thousand that took the approved value up to 11.9 million. The actual work that was performed was way under that. It was 11,686,000. As part of the resolution of this, the city authorized the engagement of Bassberry and Sims, a legal firm out of Nashville, to provide some advice and some review of how we could close the project out and what were the considerations. As we have moved through the past year, the contractor has claimed additional days due to weather and some other circumstances. The engineer's role in the project is to, even though they work for the city, they are to act as an unbiased agent to provide recommendations, whether those claims were justified under the contract documents or allowed. And so there is, when you see the difference between the 497 and if you go to the line item, the contractor has granted almost $300,000 of forfeiture of payments back to the city to cover a portion of the $497,000 of additional inspection cost. And that delta between those two is accounted for based on allowable days, again, due to weather or other extenuating circumstances that the engineer felt like that was appropriate to grant the contractor. In reviewing the recommendation, you know, since we've bid the project, we're 5 years in. This is not atypical of a heavy civil project. Most of these projects, the regional plan, as an example, when we did it we accepted bids in 2007. The project was completed and we had ribbon cut in 2011. This is typical of a large, complex project. Unfortunately, the contractor stayed a little bit too long, and that's really where the consideration has been for the past year. I will mention Frizzell is out of Bristol, Tennessee. They're a reputable water and wastewater utilities contractor. They do a lot of plant work. They're currently engaged in some projects in the Tri-Cities area, which they appear to be delivering in a satisfactory manner to those owners. So anyway, I hope that gives you some overview, and Ms. Sandoz certainly can provide other considerations you might have.
Tom, I think you did a really nice job giving a comprehensive overview of that. You've covered all the main points that we had previously discussed, so there's nothing additional from my standpoint to be added.
Commissioners, are there any questions or comments? I guess maybe Tom, just review the bottom line here, what you're asking for approval, and make sure we have a good understanding of that.
That's correct, Mayor. Well, the bottom line is you approved an original bid that was 11.864 million. You're going to be paying out a total of 11,392,730. The majority of that money has already been paid out, and the retainage has been released to the contractor. So his final payment that we will be making is 161,280 and change. And the formality of approving the balancing change order, which has language in it that the contractor agrees to, in addition to the final change or the final payment, contractor agrees that he is forfeiting the $293,700 to the city as a result of a portion of those increased fees that we had to pay for inspection.
Okay. Any other questions? Everybody ready for Thursday night then? All right. Tom, thanks so much. And Sonny, we appreciate your explanations.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
Mayor, you wanted to talk about the entrepreneurship funding agreement at this point in time?
I think so, yeah, since they're on the call and the other things are staff issues. So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. I'm a little bit at a disadvantage. I'm not up to speed on that item. With Pete not here, something that you wanted to add to it or just to discuss?
Yeah, I think we can. Heath is on here too as well. Can he log in there?
This is a golden opportunity, guys.
Yeah,
Charlie
really.
just said there's no one here who knows what we're talking about. You can tell us anything.
All right. So I think we all know that SyncSpace with Heath, Gwen, and Founders Forge with David Nelson have been working and negotiating to come together for providing the entrepreneurship kind of ecosystem that we've been talking about for several months here. And you guys have been working on your contract. You were going to come before us because you're hoping it gets on our agenda for final approval. So I'll just turn it over to you to give us an update, and we'll see if there are follow-up questions to that.
Sure. Thank you.
You can press *6.
Mind to unmute the phone number.
You're going to need to sync your audio.
Wendy, can you help us?
Yeah, Heath, you'll have to only use your webcam and turn your phone off if your webcam has audio.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that. My computer is being a little tenacious tonight. No, thank you for having us on here tonight. It's great to see you guys again. And Commissioner Murphy, it's great to meet you and be able to share with you some things we've been working on. And it's exciting to be here with David also so that we can share with you what we're doing together. I'll give you a real quick rundown for you, Commissioner Murphy, and also for you, Charlie. I'm the president of SyncSpace. We're a nonprofit that is an entrepreneur center located for the region. And we're also the Northeast Tennessee partner for Launch Tennessee, which is the partnership statewide where state dollars are put into the different regions of the state for entrepreneurial funding. We are we have our first accelerator program we just wrapped up. It was the region's first accelerator. And where we're focusing on bringing high growth companies from outside the region into our region to find a permanent home and find a workforce, but also growing companies within and how do we help them establish themselves here so that we can keep that talent in our region. Our goal personally is for us to help Johnson City become the epicenter of rural health entrepreneurship and innovation. And we say that is not just in the region, we mean that across the state, but also nationally. We want to see a flag planted in the ground in Johnson City related to rural health and healthcare technology. And so our programming is built around achieving that goal. We're working very closely with ETSU. In fact, we just funded a program for the veteran entrepreneurs through ETSU. We're also working with bringing them into our accelerator program starting this second cohort, which would be part of the funding we're asking for now. We also have programs in which we're going to fund the what we call experiential learning for students to be involved in our entrepreneurial training. And that's something David and I will also work on as well together. And then we are focusing in a unique, significant portion of our funds in Johnson City around female entrepreneurship and minority entrepreneurship opportunities, because that is traditionally underrepresented in this part of the state. We're really happy in our female entrepreneurs. We've got about 40% of our participants, about 140 companies we're working with that are female owners. And we're really excited about that. But we want to see an increase in contracts that they have access to, as well as what we want to see an increase in minority ownership. In fact, one of the things that I will hopefully be able to update soon is a partnership with a very large corporate partner related to their efforts in minority and female owner and founder contracting. So we really want to see our region be higher, elevated on the map across the state is what we are doing for entrepreneurship. That's not just representative of what's happening across the state, but something that we're leading what's happening in Tennessee, and that's where we're at now. So we had proposed, and my board had approved this agreement. I think you probably have a copy of this. Is that SyncSpace will bring funding into Johnson City for to match, and we will have the access to do up to $150,000. We'd like to do it over a commitment of 3 years, but we want to get started now, potentially between Johnson City and Washington County to do the full match. But we were excited about the partnership here, and what we are focusing on is not our ability to do everything ourselves. We're very excited about the partnership with Founders Forge and David, as well as others in the city, including the Chamber and many others, where we can help support them with resources and have them help us and help achieve their goals, is why we also make sure that we hit our goals as well. We are currently operating a partnership with Northeast State, which included $90,000 of CARES money, in which we had a very quick turnaround. We launched 4 boot camp programs in the last 90 days, or actually last 60 days. But one of the programs was around marketing, and we have David has been helping us with that, and it's going really fantastic. I think it's a good reflection of how we'll work together in the future, both with the funding here, but also what we intend to bring Founders Forge into what we're doing across the region as well, to help them as they, and especially David, is a key part of what we're trying to see happen. It's really exciting because in those 4 programs that we have, we've already had a lot of working with a lot of entrepreneurs and startup companies in Johnson City, but with the 64 companies we have in our boot camps right now, about half is from Johnson City, and that's across restaurants, high-tech companies, and a lot of different things where we've been able to pull some resources together to help companies. So we see what we're doing, and we see what we're doing here together with Founders Forge as a reflection of what an ecosystem that was fledgling maybe before our efforts, but now that we've been able to get some state dollars, we really want to put the pedal down, so to speak, so that we can help elevate what's happening in Johnson City and let Johnson City become that leader in the state.
And I'll just add, if I may, that I really think we have an opportunity here. This is a tough time for everyone, of course, but Founders Forge is all about belief in the underdog entrepreneurs in the region, and it's about cultivating new groups. And we say underdog entrepreneurs often, simply because when you are a startup here of any type, there are many times you feel like the cards are stacked against you because we're in this region. There's all these different things happening. A lot of the resources and support historically have been in the Nashville region. But as different organizations and groups have come together to provide tremendous programming, we have an opportunity here to not just grow our startups, not just get more tech companies here and all different types of entrepreneurs. But we have the true opportunity is to change our region for the better. Everybody knows technology, and every business is now a technology business, and that is the future that's coming in front of us. And if we're not engaging with people today, then we're not going to be really building for tomorrow and the next over the next decade. And so we're really excited to be working with the ecosystem and everybody coming together and working together to support multiple programs, multiple boot camps, different partnerships with ETSU. To create new opportunities that create jobs, do workforce development training in a technical level, and just grow our region's economy as a whole. And I think this is the first step for the community to buy in to these types of programming, and to really be building towards the future and not just doing what we've always done. So I'm really, really excited to be working with everybody.
Okay, Commissioner, are there questions? Any comments? Everybody's quiet tonight. Yeah. So, David, I know at one time when Founders Forge first, came over to talk with us, you were also looking at physical space for startups, for co-starter space. How are y'all addressing that now?
TVA actually approached Spark Plaza initially for a little bit of grant money to build community, and we've worked with them to actually house Founders Forge in kind of the back half of Spark Plaza. And so right now we have a space, although we're working virtually right now, but we actually do have space for entrepreneurs to come in. They have desks available to them, and it's just a nice, it's going to be, as soon as we can, bring people together. To be a nice little area for people to come in, have meetings, have space to work at. And then over time, as we grow and we develop, we think there's going to be lots more opportunities for working within multiple spaces and then partnering with Sync Space and other co-working spaces within the region. And then long term, as the economic development side happens, there may be opportunities for just a central or multiple location headquarters for this kind of entrepreneur space that we like building.
And is this being addressed in other parts of the region here for co-starter space?
So what we have been able to do here recently was working with Launch Tennessee to bring a co-working collaborative community across the state into one. And what we're trying to achieve there is to highlight that all of the co-working spaces in our region are part of the statewide community, because what that does is helps provide resources and mostly connectivity for mentoring and other things that existed. So by bringing those resources from Nashville this way, what we hope to see happen in co-working is that the expansion of Spark Plaza, for example, to how do we help make that be the most dynamic co-working space we can in Johnson City. Not that there couldn't be others, because we hope that we have such an outburst in entrepreneurship that there will be need for it. But we want to focus on these existing spaces across the region and how we help bring resources and networking for them first. There is, and we are working in Bristol and Kingsport and Greenville and all the other places now on those same things. What we want to do is that we want to see people who've taken the lead in co-working still be able to be in the lead for co-working. We support their effort through the program that we can add to what they're already doing. It kind of looks, for us, it looks like an opportunity to essentially double our effort when we already have great people across the region doing things for entrepreneurs. So how do we look to support them through resources and connections?
If I'm doing the math right, the combined total of funds that are going to be available would be $75,000 from the city that you will turn into $150,000 because of your matches from Nashville, plus an additional $25,000 that will go to Founders Forge. Is that are those the correct numbers?
So what we are doing is we've agreed to match up to 150 total, which would be for a total of 300 if we were to go there with Washington County also. So that's the first number, is that from our state dollars, because our strategy was, this is the second year of this nonprofit, and our first strategy, we started in Sullivan County. Sullivan County did a $250,000 match with us in the first year. So our strategy was that we integrate, this was with Mayor Venable and Mayor Grandy, we integrate Washington County and Johnson City in year 2. And then that was the dollar amount that we had kind of agreed that we would want to get started with here. Of course, it was a kind of a normal budget year for everyone. So, but we wanted to look at going ahead and getting to 300,000 in total between the two, Johnson City and Washington County. And then from the funding that my board approved was how do we help take some of the dollars that we're matching and have that given or being awarded to Founders Forge, and then beyond the matching dollars that we have with Founders Forge that's in the contract, we would also help bring them additional dollars by bringing them into other work and other parts of our goals.
Okay.
Okay.
Question?
Yeah, sure.
Uh-huh.
A couple questions, really, I guess, more points of clarification. First, so I think we had met with TSG. Is that something different that we'll be looking at, or is this evolved into Sync Space, or can you explain that for me?
Sure. TSG is a private company that had the contract with Johnson City to do the feasibility study back before. So TSG was awarded that contract. And then the relationship that Sync Space has with TSG is that TSG is one of our corporate partners on the accelerator program. So TSG was hired to come in and help do some consulting work and other things related to Eastman and some other things that we have going on in the region. So that entity is a private sector entity that sits kind of as a partnership with us, much like Founders Forge would, or the Chambers do, and others.
And then I don't know that I don't think I understood correctly, or can you just boil it down with what Jenny asked? The split of the city funds irrespective of Sullivan County and Washington County. What's the split as to what the city's providing, I guess, to Sync Space in order for you and Founders Forge to do the things that, you know, you all can accomplish? Is it we're providing 75 and Founders will receive 25 of that, or just real simply, you know, break that down?
Yeah, sorry, I'm having to go back between audio here. So the way what my board agreed to do was, if the city only wanted to fund up to whatever amount they wanted to fund up to, that they were comfortable with doing a third of that to fund the program that Founders Forge wants to do, not asking for withholding of any other dollars from Founders Forge, but of those dollars, so that we retained what we were matching, 2/3 of what we matched in our programs. But then my agreement with my board also was to bring additional dollars beyond what that kind of that math equation to Founders Forge to be part of the events and other things that we have goals with the state to achieve. So that would be dollars that would be contracted with them outside of just that matching equation. Does that make sense?
A little bit. So, so if you just said flat dollars, what's the expectation of what goes to Founders and what goes to Sync? Or is there still some room for change there?
So if the 75,000 is the total, and I've heard a couple numbers, so I'm just going to use that, then of that, from what the board approved was 25 to Founders, 50 to our accelerator program for rural health. And that would be just that contract that for the 75. And then we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 or more that we're going to also contract with outside of that number.
Okay, great. And then, thank you, I appreciate it. Sorry I just want to make sure I understood that clearly. And then to touch on, you mentioned Washington County. Has that meeting happened? And is there a result from Washington County?
David and I have discussed that the agreement that we have here, we're going to take immediately to the commission and the county. We've had initial conversations. I think each of us have talked with a lot of commissioners, but that's something that we intend to do immediately following this result.
And then I'm assuming, since we're seeing this as an actionable item, you know, Founders Forge, Sync Space, we're all good with moving forward as far as your two entities are concerned.
I think what John is asking is Founders Forge and Sync Space squared up everything, and the funding is agreed upon internally for you guys. Yeah, I'm still unsure of the 75-25 because I'm reading different parts of this document and it's a little unclear. In one place it's a little clearer, but in another place it kind of makes me think it's 100,000. So 75 and 25. So we'll get that cleared up. Yes, sir.
If I may, and I was going to say, we'll verify this, but it's my understanding, discussions with Pete, our cost was 75 total, which would come out of our economic development reserve. And then that would be matched with the Launch Tennessee funding of 75 for a total of 150. Now, and out of that amount, if they're paying 25 to the other organization, then that would come out of that total. But I think our total cost, to the best of my knowledge, is 75.
Yeah.
And yeah, we do have a memorandum of understanding signed between our two organizations to move forward.
Okay. And we appreciate the rest of the documents that list the objectives. And so how often would we be hearing from you, just in terms of, you know, what's going on? Can we get kind of some quarterly updates or something that, I mean, this is an exciting work you've done. I mean, I think each one of us individually have talked to you guys, and hearing some of the projects you're working on is very exciting. So I think it'd be good if we can kind of keep it front and center.
Yeah, we hope that this becomes a real central piece for not just for entrepreneurship in Johnson City, but really as a recruitment piece for all economic development, because it creates an energy that we want the city to be able to recruit on. As far as reporting goes, the way that the state reporting happens is it's quarterly. So we put together a report each quarter for that. We compile monthly, but reporting is usually done on the quarter, and then we produce a biannual and an annual report.
Be great. So we can just get a copy of that then.
Absolutely.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions? All right. Well, Heath and David, thank you so much for dialing in with us tonight and giving us an update. And I think everybody's ready to move forward on this. It's been a long time in coming, right?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate all your time.
Thank you all so much for the support.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Mhm.
There, your next item is an update from Chief Turner on the tattoo policy. Chief.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. I want to welcome Commissioner Murphy to the commission. I know that in discussions we've had in the past, Commissioner Murphy has expressed his desire to make Johnson City the best community it can be, and not be like other communities in some of the mistakes that they have made. And so I know that he will be someone I certainly look forward to working with in the future, and just welcome Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you.
And just to get Commissioner Murphy up to date, the tattoo policy for the police department, and this is solely for the police department, not for other departments in the city. In the past, our policy was that people that we hired could have tattoos as long as it was not visible in our uniform, that being a short sleeve shirt, and on special occasions we wear short pants. So you couldn't have anything, for example, on your forearms or on your calf. That would be in violation of the policy. Now, there were some officers that were hired prior to that who were grandfathered in. And so through discussions with Mr. Peterson and the commission, we looked at our hiring process, how that policy might have affected our recruitment and retention of officers. And we issued a special order before this last entry-level assessment center that said that we would hire people who had tattoos, for example, on your forearm or calf, but they would have to cover it with a long sleeve uniform, whether it be shirt or pants. No tattoos on the hands, no tattoos on the neck, face. So those were the what was written into our special order. And a special order kind of gets us, if you change a general order or a policy at the police department, that can kind of be a stopgap to get from point A to point B. So I know that the commission has shared some of their thoughts about the wearing of the uniform and the need to cover a tattoo, or the need not to cover a tattoo. So it would be just wear our uniform of the day, regardless of whether it covered a tattoo or not. So just to update where we're at, our planning and research manager, Ms. Brack, sent out a survey to the employees at the police department, to the officers, and 123 answered that survey. 78% said that the policy should change to allow exposed tattoos on all employees. 13% said allow employees to have tattoos, but they must be concealed by the uniform. And 9% said allow employees to have tattoos that would be covered with some form of sleeve, whether it be a skin covered sleeve or like an Under Armour type sleeve, which would be possibly like a black sleeve, which would be more, it would be the material that allows better breathing than our uniform. So better ventilation for the officers. So that was one of the questions that was asked. I'll just go over the others quickly. We asked if our employees thought that visible tattoos would negatively affect the professional image of the police department, and 12.2% answered that they agreed it would, or they strongly agreed that it would. 11.4% they had no They didn't agree or disagree, and a total of 76.4% said they thought that it would not negatively affect the image of the police department. We also asked the employees if they believed the community would approve or disapprove of visible tattoos. And it looks like 63.4% said that they believed the community would approve of tattoos. 31.7% had no opinion, and 4.9% said members of the community would disapprove. And then just a couple more questions. We asked if the employees thought there would be citizen complaints about an officer's tattoos being offensive to them. 18.7% said that they thought there would be complaints about tattoos being offensive. 19.5% had no opinion, and it looks like 61.8% said they did not think there would be complaints about offensive tattoos. And then we asked about the policy improving morale, and about 90.2% said they believed it would increase morale in the department. And the final question was, if the policy was changed to where you could have a visible tattoo, would the employee consider getting a new tattoo during the next 12 to 18 months? And about 31.2% said it was likely or very likely that they would get additional tattoos if the policy was changed. Mr. Peterson also asked that we send the same survey to our Civil Service Commission. I think he values their opinion, and also if there is a disciplinary action in reference to the policy, it could be appealed to them. So he wanted their input as well. 4 of the Civil Service Commissioners have answered, and we're still waiting on a reply from the 5th Civil Service Commissioners. I will say that 2 of those Civil Service Commissioners, 2 of the 4 that answered, said that they would support allowing tattoos to be exposed. So we're still waiting. And we sent that out Thursday, so one of the commissioners may not have had the opportunity to check his email and answer that question.
Chief, were you able to kind of slice and dice your survey a little bit and look at it by demographics? I'm assuming probably the Civil Service Board is probably in my age group, but were y'all able to look at it that way?
We didn't ask for demographics. It's totally anonymous. And so that's how the responses come back by using SurveyMonkey. So
that's good. That's fine.
We did talk to some, I talked to the recruiter at the Marine Corps. He said that their policy changes when they have a new Marine Commandant come on board. And right now you have to be able to cover that tattoo with your hand, whether it be on your forearm or your calf, whatever the case may be. There's also some limitations on how close it can be to your wrist or to your ankles. So just some different things. And it would depend on the agency. Some agencies locally, they have to cover them. Some agencies have a sleeve, and some allow just the exposed tattoos. So it's a complete variety with other agencies in the area as well.
Thanks for that data, Chief. I know you're waiting on a few extra responses. What's the expectation of, are y'all starting to draft something? And then if y'all are looking at drafting a policy, is this going to be something that goes out for another review via a survey, or what's the plan?
I don't think we're looking at another survey. I think that we will go forward from the information that we have now. I do still have some concerns about content of tattoos, and and I can discuss that individually. I think it's something that we'd have to dig a little bit deeper into, but I'd be glad to discuss that individually with any of the commissioners who have an interest or want to know what that information is. Where we're at now, we're preparing to offer offers of employment to 8 employees. One of those future employees that's going to be coming on board has a tattoo on his forearm. So when I discussed his employment with him, he understands right now that he would have to wear a long sleeve uniform. Of course, we're in the winter months, and I did tell him that is subject to change as we finalize this general order. So, it gives us a little bit of time to make sure that we are where we want to be with a final policy. I think that once we institute a policy, if we allow officers to expose their tattoos, it's very difficult to go back and change that policy to something more restrictive. So, I think it's something that the city needs to be completely comfortable with as we go forward, if that's the case.
Chief, if I may ask a question, just as your current policy, if do you have a fixed time frame now where you have long sleeve and long trouser uniforms from a certain date to a certain date? Is there a fixed time frame for that?
Yes, sir. We wear long sleeves until and I can't remember the month that the time changes. So somebody 1 month before the time changes, the officers have a choice of wearing short sleeves or long sleeves. So what is it, March?
In the March.
Yeah, March, I think that the officers have that option of either wearing long or short sleeves at their discretion. It's as the weather starts warming up, we want them to be comfortable, so they have that choice. And so we have a little bit of time to to discuss all the policies, where we could go, and what any concerns might be with that policy.
And is shorts typically worn just on a bike patrol, or is that pretty much open for every officer in the summertime? How does that work?
It depends on the assignment. The 4th of July, you'll see a lot of officers that are wearing the shorts. Our downtown officer who patrols either on foot or bicycle, you'll frequently see that officer wearing shorts as well. And there's some other special events that all our Blue Plums, any festival, road races, things like that, you typically see a lot of officers wearing shorts as well. But yes, in the summertime.
Chief, if you had an opportunity to go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Chief, Pete had shared the good news on the 8 offers for the new officers coming on.
Yes, sir.
In a given year, that's a positive sign. In a given year, how many officers do we expect to leave by attrition out the other end, retirement, other job? What's the burn, I guess?
It's difficult to say that they leave for different reasons. I will say that we have had 2 officers have already signed their retirement paperwork to leave before the end of January. We'll have 2 going. Another officer has expressed his intention to leave before June, and we may have an additional officer who's looking at retirement, but he has not signed his paperwork, or he's not, kind of given us a final statement that he is leaving. So,
but those are people planning to transition into claiming their TCRS benefit, correct?
The 2 that have already signed their paperwork, yes, they will be claiming their TCRS benefit.
But you people leave for other reasons. They take jobs, the spouse gets transferred to another state. I mean, do we have a rough number that we think, will we lose 7 a year, 10 a year, 12, like
7 might be a good estimate. We have 1 officer that they're doing a background for, the FBI is doing a background for employment for that officer. So we don't know how that will turn out, and it's probably a pretty long process. So depending on the time,
you should say things about that officer that caused the FBI to have pause, right? Is that? Oh, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to do that. Never mind.
Well, and to add to Joe's question, Chief, on top of those that retire or take jobs elsewhere, you know, the police force, you know, obviously when there's an incident, I'm assuming, you know, if there's a shooting or if there's something, you know, officers have to take leave for different reasons. And of course, obviously several, I'm sure, are also in the guard or in other capacities that might make them not fully leave, but temporarily leave where there's additional shortages upon over and above just retirements and jobs outside of the police department. So, you know, so we're talking 7 or 8 that will permanently be gone in a year, but what are we looking at as far as, you know, that kind of thing as well?
It's not uncommon, Commissioner Hunter, to see officers who are in the guard or reserves be deployed for up to a year. And I actually have an exit interview with one of our officers who will be deployed for a year. I think he's in the Naval Reserve. So we'll lose that officer we know for a year. And we do speak with them before they leave to help them in their transition as they leave and as they come back. So, you know, we also have members of the military who go for their 2-week duties. They may take time off to fulfill other commitments with the military as well. So yes, sir. That is, in addition to that, we have, you know, we also have officers that we have to send for training. We just had an officer who came back from polygraph school. That was 10 weeks that he was in training. So there's several things that affect our manpower.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't even think about the training component. And of course, that's key. I mean,
FMLA will have officers that are off for the birth of a child or to care for a sick spouse or a sick family member. So, you know, we could be down, in addition to the 14 vacancies, you know, any number of people depending on military service and FMLA, those type of things.
And you may not know this, and this just came to my mind as we saw the news, the national news today with the rollout of the COVID vaccine, but where did police officers stand in that rollout? And Todd might know, or somebody might, I don't know.
Actually, Commissioner Hunter, I spoke with emergency management and Chad Bruckman of the Tennessee Department of Health. It's my understanding that that the first responders that they're included in the first phase, which could be as early as middle of the month, which is the middle of the month this week, next week, before the end of the month.
That's great news.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Yeah.
Yes,
so
sir.
Chief, you gave us some information early on about 18 different departments that you kind of benchmark, and 11 of those had the more liberal policies. Have you had a chance to talk with any of their chiefs about, I mean, what kind of issues are they running into? Is it getting out of control, or how are they managing it, particularly on content?
Not so much on content as I've talked to some of the departments that they covered their tattoos with a sleeve, again, to try to make it more comfortable for their officers. Some departments ran into an issue with that. Some did not, depending on what type of product they chose to try to cover the tattoos with. You know, some departments are strictly that you'll cover it with a uniform throughout the year. But nobody really mentioned anything as far as content that they had problems with. But I didn't specifically ask a lot of those chiefs.
So back to Commissioner Hunter's question a little while ago, then what would the next steps be now that you've kind of gotten the survey back, and I guess y'all are going to roll your sleeves up and take a real hard look at it and decide what's the best policy for our police department, and hopefully for recruiting issues and those kind of things that were really kind of the basis of our concerns anyway.
Yes, ma'am. We closed out the survey with our employees of Wednesday of last week. I gave Mr. Peterson a copy on Thursday, and then I was off on Friday. So we've not really discussed. He's had the survey to look at, so we've not really discussed it yet this week. I'm sure we'll discuss it this week and talk about how to go forward and what the different policies might look like, and get his thoughts on the recruiting. Like I said, I know of at least one that we hired out of this upcoming 8 that had a tattoo that we would not have considered him before. There may be others. I just know that his was pretty prominent on his forearm. So there may be others, and I say one, it may be more than that, but because it wasn't an issue, we were going to hire them regardless. I didn't really delve deeper into whether they had tattoos that would be in violation of our old policy. So we kind of have a stopgap policy, and now I say it's a stopgap. It's called a special order. It allows us to make an immediate change, and then we want to have something that's really finalized that we'll include in our general orders. So it's just a matter of getting together with Mr. Peterson and any of the commissioners who, like I said, wanted to some additional information on content. I would be glad to discuss that, but I think it's a matter that maybe one-on-one might be more appropriate.
Yeah, I would think some of these chiefs and some of the other areas, just having that conversation around content might be real a good conversation to have. So commissioners, are there other comments or questions that you might have? Well, Chief, we really appreciate you going the extra effort on this. And I know it's been kind of a long haul, and but we appreciate that, and we'll look forward to kind of hearing the end results.
And again, we're real happy that we were able to offer jobs to 8 applicants. I think our last 2 assessments, we hired 3 and 2 respectively. And so we're quite thrilled to have the opportunity to offer employment to 8 people who want to be police officers and serve their community. That's
really great news. And I think, going forward too, this commission really needs to look at some of those other things that may be recruiting issues. Is TCRS still an issue there? Is, where are we on our pay scale? What are the things we really need to be looking at? So we're looking to you to, bring it back to us so that we, so we don't get put in a position to say, oh, we didn't know that, and then we lose a lot of people. So let's stay now really on top of this and try to move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay, Charlie.
Mayor, we have 2 items that Sonny Santos is here to brief you on: the mobile food vendor policy, and also Title 8 of the Beer Ordinance 4755-20. And I'll let Sonny comment on that. And I see Mr. Peterson has joined us, so I'm certainly welcome to see him.
Pete, we don't say, there you are. Are you just dialing in, Pete?
I think he's having trouble with his audio.
Okay. All right.
Second.
Okay, so go ahead.
It's Sonny, I just, before you go deep into it all, are there specific, and if I'm wrong, but are there just specific points that we need to be highlighting and addressing in these 2 things, or are they totally renovated items that we need to go over the full thing, or, just, is it kind of 30,000 feet?
A little bit of all. So the mobile food vendor policy is a completely brand new policy. Okay. I'm not going to go into each page and each paragraph. We'll just kind of give the overview of that and then address any additional questions that you might have. Now, I'm going to start with Title 8 though, because those are a bit more brief and probably not going to elicit as many questions. So there's 2 elements that are going to be revised on the ordinance for Title 8. The first revision that we've got is a change to Section 209, Part 5. The revision is going to read that the city shall issue no license until the premises for which the application is filed has received a certificate of substantial completion from the city. That is different than what we're doing. Is we're removing the requirement that you have to have a certificate of occupancy and replacing that with the certificate of substantial completion. That's a document that you'll see as a backup that's been created by Development Services specifically for this code revision. This was initiated in response to some of the questions that we've had with the renovation of old businesses downtown that have become restaurants breweries, bars, establishments that are selling alcohol and that have applied for the beer license. Our license currently requires the certificate of occupancy. The certificate of occupancy is how this has been explained to me through our development services and through code, is that that's kind of like the birth certificate of the business. You only get one. And one of the issues that we run into with businesses is whenever you've got businesses coming into old buildings and renovating them, what's changing as part of the codes process, there's a lot of changes that go on with this. And so whenever we are asking for a new certificate of occupancy or for a certificate of occupancy, it's not really serving the purpose that we're needing it for on these old businesses. So in order to actually address what we're truly needing, which is the business safe? Is it substantially complete? Does it meet the structural code, mechanical requirements to be occupied for the purpose of which the business is seeking? So that's why we worked, the legal department worked very closely with codes to identify what exactly is needed, what is the best way to achieve this, and what's the most efficient way for these businesses to be able to meet these requirements that we're looking for on the application. Whenever we change the application, that also does require a change of the ordinance, because this is something that's stated in our Title 8, which is why you see this before you as an ordinance change. In order to revise the ordinance, it takes an ordinance. And so that is the first element for the changes that you're going to see on Title 8. So that is the certificate of substantial completion. The second change that you see on Title 8 is in reference to Section 209, Part 6. That is primarily just defining how distances are going to be measured. If you do not have in your code how the distance is measured, then there's some case law that goes into which method is utilized. It's best practice to have a clear definition. So we want it to be measured from the front door of the licensed premises to the nearest entrance or exit of any of these disqualifying buildings, the school, child daycare center, park, playground, church, or other bona fide religious establishment. If you're not measuring, so if the building, if one of these isn't an actual physical structure, like if it's a playground or an athletic field that falls into these qualifications, then it goes to the front door of the licensed premises to the nearest point on the property line in a straight line. So it's just clarifying and defining exactly how these are going to be measured. We have these same definitions already with regard to liquor stores, package stores. This is adding in the definition so that it's a very clear definition for how to measure the site distance lines for licensed premises that have a beer license.
Sonny, I want to make sure that, a number of years ago, since I'm the oldest one on the commission, I do remember in the 2013, 2014 time period that we changed it from 100 feet to 200 feet. And Pete will remember this, I think. And a big part of that was the service station, the gas station on the corner of Knob Creek and Market Street couldn't sell beer because of its proximity to Kiwanis Park and the veterans. And now the Veterans Memorial is there, which was across the street and on the corner, and its access was from Market Street. So is what you're saying here is we're going to change it back to the 100 feet?
I can let Ms. Peters speak a little more to that. My understanding is that it actually was the opposite, that it about 8 years ago that it reduced in the footage to 100.
We increased it so that place could actually be in business. I realize my older brain may forget things, but Pete, do you recall that? So we may not have him.
Well, the shorter distance is least restrictive. And we already have the 100 feet in for package stores, meaning you can be within 100 feet. Whereas if you had 200 feet in there, if you were 100 feet away, you would not be able to be licensed.
I'm looking at it wrong. Okay. I got you. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So no, this is actually, it's a least restrictive measurement. We already had 100 feet in the ordinance with regard to package stores. We're just clarifying how exactly to measure that for beer.
Okay.
For places to sell beer.
And that was about beer at that time too. So maybe it's what we did. We took it to 100 where it used to be the greater distance.
Yeah. We just now have the clarification of measuring. Any other questions regarding the revisions to Title 8? Okay. The other matter that I have for you, which is a brand new thing, this is going to be a resolution for your consideration for a mobile food vendor policy. About 18 months ago, there were a lot of special events policies that were being considered, and permits, or not policies, permits. And a lot of those included mobile food vendor units, which is food trucks. And there's a definition that's in this policy to identify that, because the definition can vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but we've defined that. But there was a lot of discussion with this growing industry of the mobile food vendor units with the food trucks. And there was a lot of concern that came out of some of the various departments across the city. And so what legal's done is a collaborative effort to create this policy with fire prevention and code enforcement. There was a lot of concern from fire with regard to how to permit these, how to inspect them. There wasn't any consistency. Shocking to you all, it's hard to enforce a rule when you don't have a rule written. We didn't have a policy that governed these, and so there was definitely a need to create some parameters and some consistency with these businesses that are coming in, with the ones that are currently located here. Fire's expressed that there can be a lot of volatility with these types of units. They've got multiple components that can be hazardous. There's a lot of different things that need to be secured in a certain way to make them safe. So what legal did was begin examining across the state and actually across the country different policies that are in place to govern these types of food trucks. In doing so, and you'll note in the summary, this policy was actually reviewed and given an A+ rating from the National Food Truck Association. The National Food Truck Association works directly with municipalities, with government bureaucracies to review codes, ordinances, procedures to best address this growing industry. And they're specifically looking, well, a big part of what they do is they're advocates for policies and procedures that ensure public safety. And so that's one of the big things that we focused on with this policy was public safety. So I'm not going to go through the policy line by line unless there's a request to do so. In the process of researching this, drafting this, Sherry Keenan, who's paralegal for the legal department, reached out and worked directly with the president of National Food Truck Association. His name's Matthew Geller. And then also worked directly with Eric Mullins, who's an engineer with the Washington County Public Health Department. And we've learned that the Washington County Public Health Department actually has a big permitting part also for these mobile food vendor units. So you're going to see that those requirements in this policy as well. Our policy that we're presenting for your consideration is primarily focused for special events. This does not get into zoning, meaning this doesn't address outside of special events where these units can be permanently parked, semi-permanently parked. It doesn't get into those aspects. This is primarily the requirements for, are they permitted? Are they safe? If we put them in the middle of a festival in the middle of our city property, Are they safe for everybody to be around? Have they been inspected properly? And it also creates a mechanism to where we don't have our fire prevention going out the day of special events, trying to figure out which ones are permitted, which ones are not. If there are alterations that are made at the time of, are those permitted? Or, are they enough distance apart? Are they essentially safe for the public in these gatherings that we're having downtown? Like I said, it's taken about 18 months to complete the research and the drafting on this policy, which that was, I guess, one of the silver linings of COVID, is that it allowed for a reprieve of the special events so that we could have something to present to you for your consideration before everything gets back into full swing. Are there specific questions with the policy?
Sonny, I would just ask, you said it's been reviewed and approved by the National Food Truck Association. I'm guessing that's a professional organization outside of this area. Has this been reviewed with any local food truck vendors?
My understanding is that last summer there was conversation between the fire prevention officers and some of the local vendors. Before Thursday, I can research that and gather some additional information regarding any of those conversations, or specifically who those conversations took place with. I personally have not had any of those conversations.
Yeah, I think we should. I do recall those conversations last summer, but they probably weren't, you know, I do. I think we all recall what happened down at Blue Plum. So I think it'd be good. I mean, it's really been so helpful as we've reviewed the international building codes to have the Home Builders Association, some developers and builders, you know, really helping us kind of sort through some of these things. And I'd hate to come up with a policy and then I'll pass it and somebody says, well, why didn't you ask us about how it would affect our business? And so I don't know, what do the rest of you think?
I'm wondering if some of the current food trucks are going to be non-compliant, and then they'll ask to be grandfathered or something else. And you know, what are we going to do about the ones that have been in business for years already? And so I definitely talked to those people before to make sure that they're understanding what we're just about to pass.
I would want to echo that. I'm sorry, Sonny, go ahead. I would want to echo that, just insofar as a lot of these food trucks that I'm aware of also are not domiciled in Johnson City, so it's a little harder to pin them down. A couple of them I'm aware of are coming from Carter County or Unicoi County. And I'm just thinking back to even changes we've just recently been discussing with Preston about the child care centers, where we created regulation in our zoning that really kind of overlapped, duplicated, and kind of ran right alongside state standards for childcare. If the health department, for example, issues the inspections and so forth, I just want to be careful not to delve into area where we're creating rules that start to do things similar to what the health inspection policies do. And I don't necessarily need you to specifically address that yet, but you know, we don't want to make it so bureaucratic people are incentivized to kind of fly under the radar and just go undetected, because I don't think that creates a safer or better product for anybody.
Absolutely. No, the purpose of this is to establish a permitting policy for those special events whenever we do have the vendors coming in. The ones that are domiciled here, have their business license here, should already have had their full inspection by the Washington County Health Department. We will have some that are not domiciled in this area, and what this is going to do is hopefully create some consistency for the safety features and guidelines for those businesses as well, which allows our fire prevention to be able to go in at a set time, make those inspections, make sure that they're meeting all the requirements that we have in place, and then not have to do those every single event for the next 10 weekends that they come into town, that it's taken care of once. But we'll absolutely start reaching out to some of those businesses and making sure that this is something that doesn't catch them off guard as well.
Okay, any other questions? We ready to take this up Thursday night, or we want, there's Pete. We see you. Late dinner.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything specific we want to make sure before we vote on it Thursday night? So whether local vendors have been apprised of this and get some input on that? Preston, do you know if any of the local ones have seen this?
I am personally not aware, but I can work with Ms. Sandos and help her in any way possible between now and Thursday.
So there's not a real rush on time, is there, to pass this? I mean, if we decided not to take it up Thursday night, we could move it to the next meeting without any.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
As a resolution, it does not have to go through 3 readings.
Okay.
It is heard once, and at this time, there are no special events being considered by the city.
I'll just speak for myself. I feel a lot more comfortable if we kind of got it out there just a little bit and then brought it back. But I'll let the rest of the commission decide if they want to keep it on the agenda or not.
Jenny, I kind of am in line with you on this to kind of see if we could push this back just a little bit.
It's going to take me that long to read this whole resolution. There's a lot in it.
Well, and I think
I have to admit,
it's highly unlikely we're going to be setting up a lot of food trucks in the next 45 days.
I think we have,
either by weather or by pandemic.
Yeah. Let's just make sure that we who have to vote on it are comfortable, that we truly understand it, and that it's been kind of tested out there a little bit too.
Jenny, Mayor, would it be worthwhile to, parade it in front of the Blue Plum organization and others that actually deal with events, Emoja, like some of these event coordinators who deal with these people, or some of the, actual food vendors? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I certainly don't think it would hurt, because what you're going to get are what the complaints are going to be if we pass it and they've never seen it. And then all of a sudden, it starts coming out of the woodwork. So we'd hear that ahead of time, I think. But since we're not in a real time crunch, I would just really suggest that we get out there and test it just a little bit. And certainly, the JCDA special events people who work with it on an ongoing basis down there. And, we all see it. I mean, you've got these propane canisters sitting around and, wires running everywhere, electrical cables and everything. So it needs to be shored up for sure. But why don't we do that and just defer it to a meeting in January? We're good?
We're good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sonny. All right. Who's Charlie? You're going to keep going, or?
Yeah, I'll at least lead in just to let Pete know we already addressed the entrepreneurship funding agreement. So that would take us to the item of request from Dr. Cooper about a rezoning of property owned by a Mr. Myers, and Preston Mitchell has that item to review with you.
Yeah, Dr. Cooper's not on the line, is he?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Preston.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Let me, I need to share my screen so that I can bring you up to speed on a couple of things. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I'll orient you really quickly. This is the west side of town. Here is West Market Street up here at the top of the screen. Here is the West Market Walmart. Here is West Walnut Street running parallel. And then in between West Walnut and West Market is this piece of property right here. It's made up of 4 different pieces of property. And I'm going to zoom in on it, and you'll see that it is currently zoned RP3. It was zoned RP3 as part of a concept plan rezoning that occurred back in 2011, where Mr. Myers received concept plan approval and rezoning to the little bit higher intensity, higher density residential district to allow for a 22 unit development. You'll see that it is, it's surrounded by R2, which is our traditional low density single family zoning district. But it's not alone. There is another RP3 piece that's just a few hundred feet east on Blakemore, on Mayfield. You'll see that there's even some RP3 to the south. The RP3 over here on the right, or a little bit further east, that occurred in 2008. So that occurred before his. And then I'll get rid of the address point, zoom back out again. David came forward in 2011 asking for his approval. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I'm going to show you what the plan looks like, what he received approval for. So tell me when you see this. Can you see that? Okay. So this is a concept plan that was approved by the City Commission in 2011, along with the rezoning. And here you can see it is 11 buildings, so 11 duplex units, and it's a condo development, or a PUD, planned unit development, that proposes 22 units. So that happened in 2011, and then for a variety of reasons that are, often unknown to us on the private side or on the public side, there can be everything from financing issues to property acquisition issues to environmental issues. There's a number of things that can happen that we're not privy to. But bottom line, he did not pull the trigger on this project. And in 2014, he actually, so 3 years after the rezoning, he came forward to engineering and asked for some guidance from engineering, from Alan Cantrell and other folks, on putting together his construction set. So some guidance was provided by engineering at that time. They modified the driveways, things like that. Again, he still decided not to pull the trigger. And so now fast forward another 6-7 years, and now he wants to move forward on it. So before he can move forward on this project, he needed to do two things. One, he needed to get a preliminary plat approval, which was not done. And then he needs to get technically an amendment to his concept plan. And that has to do with the driveways. So the amendment to the concept plan triggered a neighborhood meeting. So we reached out to the neighborhood, held a neighborhood meeting, and that's what got us to where we are today. The neighbors in this area were very upset, to put it lightly, about this proposed development. We're certainly concerned and confused about how did it all happen in 2011? Did we follow due process? Were folks notified, et cetera, et cetera? And we went back and pulled all of our records, pulled the paper files from 2011, found that we did follow due process. There was notification sent. We still even have the addresses and names of everybody who received notification. We have all the minutes from the Planning Commission meetings and the City Commission meetings, and all of that was provided to the community. Because of the level of concern, we decided to go back after that neighborhood meeting and talk to Mr. Myers again, see what his thoughts were. And then also the neighborhood wanted to talk to staff about, what were their options. And so one of the first things that the neighborhood asked was, what can we do to change the zoning? And we advised the neighborhood that, that's a pretty significant uphill battle, because you're asking to change another person's zoning that he specifically sought and obtained lawfully in 2011. But you still have a right to seek this. So there are there are only 3 entities that can seek a rezoning in the city of Johnson City, and that's the property owner, which we know Mr. Myers is not going to seek to change it, the planning commission and or staff, and then the city commission. And so the neighbors asked, well, how do we go to the city commission and ask them to initiate this rezoning? So in the zoning ordinance, it specifies that the city commission can initiate the process by resolution. So we went back to the neighborhood again. We had a second neighborhood meeting. Both times when we held the neighborhood meeting, it was a hybrid, physical and virtual. So we did have a pretty large component of folks who logged in and on a Zoom call. And then we had folks safely spaced out in the council chambers or the commission chambers. So we advised the neighborhood on kind of what their options were. And then both of those meetings, David attended. And at the second meeting, he brought his realtor, the gentleman who was involved in the 2011 rezoning, asking for the realtor to speak and provide some insight. Also at the second neighborhood meeting, David brought sketches of what the homes would look like. Very nice, but didn't seem to quell any of their concerns. They mentioned many of the same things that were written in the minutes from 2011. That's everything from the densification of the area to traffic along Mayfield and Blakemore, Mayfield acting as a cut through from Carter Cells to West Walnut, et cetera, et cetera. So very, very, very similar concerns, but still wanting to have something done. And so Dr. Cooper seemed to kind of rise to the top as a speaker for that group. And it was his work in putting together the petition that you have in front of, or that you have in your hands. And I'm going to pull it back up again so you can see it, just in case you don't have a copy of it. I don't know, that's, let's see. My office is shutting down here.
Charlie probably turned your lights off.
Where is that? Forgive me.
While he's doing that, Charlie, could you turn the heat off in Preston's office? You just start dropping the temperature in there.
There we go. Okay. So this is the letter that was provided to you all virtually. If you recall, Mayor, that was when Dr. Cooper had to call in. Unfortunately, he was having some connection issues, so it was a little hard to hear all of what he was saying. But this is the letter that was provided to you, and then behind the letter were these signatures. And so it was this quite sizable petition. So again, the process for the neighborhood is to come to you, and this is really a unique situation. I certainly, this hasn't happened in the short 2 years I've been here. Mr. Peterson may be able to say whether or not he's seen or experienced this, but it is unique for the neighborhood to try to change the zoning out from underneath a developer or out from underneath a property owner who, it would be one thing if this property owner, simply had this zoning in place since it was annexed. It was annexed in 1988. The zoning that was applied in 1988, I believe, was the R2. And so he sought this specific zoning and the concept plan in 2011. So they're asking to change that and downzone it back to the R2. And so what would happen here is the commission would discuss and consider whether or not you believe that this petition and the comments in Dr. Cooper's letter are worthy enough or are substantial enough that you believe that the rezoning should be considered. So even if you adopted a resolution to initiate the rezoning, that doesn't mean that you support the rezoning. Adopting a resolution just means that you would start the process, and that would automatically send it to the Planning Commission for consideration, and then they would vote, and then it would ultimately come back to you. Or you could simply state that, no, we, the City Commission stand by the City Commission that was in effect and at the time in 2011, believe that this is, this was done according to all of the laws and the rules on the books at the time, and it stands, and we need to find other ways to mitigate the neighbors' concerns. But that's the background of this. It's a little bit of a unique situation, but I'm certainly here to answer any and all questions.
All right, commissioners, what questions do you have? Or
I've been on the planning commission for many years, and so before coming to the city commission, I've never encountered something like this, and I would be curious. I don't know if this is a Sonny, Preston, or Pete question, but you're effectively meddling in a property owner, your property rights. They own this property, they've got it zoned a certain way, and we're now going to come in and say, no, the thing you thought you could do, we're going to need to take away some of those rights. Now I realize we do that as a city, and so potentially, I know in an HOA realm, you're opening yourself up for all sorts of problems. What does a property owner do on the receiving end of this kind of change, and what do we open ourselves up to if we do that?
Well, I think the thing that you have to be most careful of is the message that you send to the development community, because there are a number of developers who have property in their possession that has zoning in place to accommodate future plans that they may have or are in the process of implementing. And I think if you step in and change the zoning of a piece of property, you have sent a message to the development community that anybody is susceptible to that based on the action of changing this zoning. I think you're right, Vice Mayor, in that this is absolutely a vested property right, because Mr. Myers acquired the property, got it rezoned legally, and had his preliminary plans approved. So I think there is a reasonable expectation on the part of Mr. Myers that what he was doing and is planning to do is lawful, and then he should be able to go ahead and complete his project as has been approved in the past. Nothing's really changed out there since 2011 in terms of real significant additional density. I heard Preston make the comment a few minutes ago, something about Mayfield being a cut through from Walnut over to Carter Sales. Having grown up on this side of town, that street's been somewhat of a cut through for a long time. If you're going from Market Street, Carter Sales Road, and need to go back towards Jonesboro. Of course, Allen Cantrell and our traffic engineers could best address traffic, but no more units than what David's talking about there. It's not going to be a tremendous number of additional vehicle trips per day. One thing I would like for Preston to share with you all is the density allowed by RP3 versus the density allowed by R3, which there is a piece of R3 property just slightly to the east and the south of this piece of property. So I know R3, I believe, allows 7 units per acre, and Preston, RP3 is something less than 7 units per acre. Is that correct?
No, sir, it's actually more. It's 8.5.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Now,
And
correct me if I'm wrong, RP3 would have been picked because it would have had the more generous allowance, but it would have had a binding site plan, would it not?
Correct. And that was what I showed on the screen.
Right. So the idea, in addition to this rezoning having been approved, the concept for what was going in there was approved, as you indicated. And what was in it for them is they've tied their hands. They don't have, but they don't have 7 units. To Pete's question, they have 8.5. So my question still, I mean, Pete answered the question in terms of its implications in the development community, but let's say we did this, what kind of legal jeopardy? I mean, coming in and rezoning a person's property and restricting some of their options for it, do they have legal recourse against the city? Do we get into questions of eminent domain?
Well, ultimately, the legal side of it is for Ms. Sandos to answer. Allow me to answer it from a legislative perspective, which I hope is going to help provide some clarity to the question. Because the city commission is specifically identified in the zoning code as an entity that can initiate a rezoning by resolution. That means that the city commission could at any time, if they adopt a separate resolution, simply initiate the process. And then now they have to follow due process, or staff has to follow due process, meaning legal ads in the paper, take it before the planning commission has to make a recommendation to you, and then ultimately you make the deciding vote, and then there has to be a public hearing. So there is a set due process which you would obviously follow, and then if you follow due process, that's simply another legislative action on top of any previous legislative actions, and the legislative action that would occur just simply removes any of the older ones. So my professional experience in this matter has been that a legislative action over another legislative action simply repeals the previous one. So then back to your question, I don't believe that there's any liability, so to speak, because you're acting legislatively. You are removing the zoning before and replacing it with a new. If staff or any other entity were to issue a permit that was in violation of the RP3, or the opposite, if staff was to refuse to issue a permit for the RP3, then there may be some grounds there. But when you're acting legislatively, one piece of legislation can replace another. Outside of that, I would need to rely on Ms. Sandos.
So Preston, the thing I think that needs to be added to your description there, and that was very helpful on the legislative side, but even at that, we will be doing it against the owner's wishes. That's not what they. Now, let me try to kind of boil this down. The reason we're even talking about this tonight is because the petition that the neighborhood sent to us in November requested specifically that we rezone it. Is that correct? It's been a while since I looked at it, and it was so fast on the screen a minute ago. What is the specific ask that they want some feedback on? Either we're going to go back and say we're not interested in doing that, or that we agree that a resolution would move forward. So,
right, you are correct. The specific ask is they actually included several of the items that were discussed in 2011 about traffic. For example, there was quite a lot of traffic discussion in 2011, and allegedly, obviously I wasn't here, but there were folks who showed up at these current neighborhood meetings who said that there were promises made about traffic calming devices on Mayfield, and we've not seen traffic calming devices, but there can be a number of reasons why that didn't occur. So that's kind of a separate matter that can be addressed through Mr. Peterson and Mr. Penzola and all that kind of stuff. They're asked to change the zoning. You're going through the proper process right now. It was submitted through public comment. You're considering it in an open forum. If you decide to move forward, then the process would start, but you could also simply, as a group, decide that, no, this is not appropriate. And this property owner sought this rezoning, received it lawfully. There's a concept plan approved, due process was followed, and we would like to hold that. And then you would just know that with a no, there may be some folks who show up at the Planning Commission and the City Commission to object to the concept plan amendment, but a decision will have been made on any attempts to rezone. So what we're doing right now is we're giving the neighborhood a voice, and because they were really upset. So the neighborhood's got a voice, and
but actually, Preston, didn't the neighborhood have a voice in 2011 when this was adopted in a public meeting and the rezoning was applied and a concept plan was approved? I mean, to say we're giving them a voice now is to belie the fact that we gave them a voice 9 years ago.
Right. No, sir. I'm not at all trying to suggest that they didn't have a voice before. What's happened is there's now a new process in play that brings him back in front of the public. And so because there's this new process in play, folks are engaged. And so they've asked a question. And so we've simply provided a response to the question.
Preston, I'm still unclear. I don't know that you ever answered the mayor's question to a point that I understood it. What action does the petition request the city commission to take or consider? I understand the process and all the other stuff, but what are they really asking for so that they know what question they're responding to?
It appears it's in the last paragraph.
The very last paragraph. The 107 property owners signed below request the city commission to reevaluate the zoning of our area. Even after hearing Mr. Meyer's presentation of a proposed building project, we object to his concept plan and would prefer he build single-family units. We feel the building of multiple duplexes in such a crowded fashion would be a detriment to the well-being and safety of our neighborhood. So
they're asking that the city commission consider rezoning that piece of property.
Correct.
Okay, let me ask you another question, if I may, Mayor. I apologize for interrupting here, but
go ahead.
Why he had his concept plan and the rezoning approved in 2011. What exactly triggered the necessity for an elected or an appointed body to reconsider this matter now? Did his site plan expire due to the length of time, or did he change something that necessitated this reconsideration and approval?
The second, he changed something that necessitates a concept plan amendment.
Is he still going to do the same number of units he originally proposed?
He is.
What did he change?
It was the ingress and egress points. It was the driveways.
So if Mr. Myers chose to develop his original approved plan, leaving the egress points where they were originally approved, he could go out there tomorrow with a permit and begin grading and digging foundations. Is that correct?
No, sir, because he still needs preliminary plat approval.
Okay.
He received preliminary plat approval.
he never got preliminary plat. Okay, thank you. That helps me understand that a lot better. But
let me kind of jump in here. And commissioners, obviously, this meeting tonight is not a meeting that we deliberate or make decisions on. It is for information. I would defer, Pete, to you and to Preston to either bring us back a recommendation that would be placed on our agenda so it could properly be done. And, you know, take it from there, because, you know, we can't do anything tonight. You know, we've heard it, we've gone over it again from the time we did in November. And there are a lot of, you know, there are a lot of issues around this thing. So I would really defer to staff to either bring us back a recommendation to move this to a public hearing or to, you know, public conversation where action could be taken or not.
And Mayor, if I could, I just, but first, and you may have put this in earlier, Preston, but is there a reason why it would come to the city commission rather than the planning commission, since this is typically originally approved or considered by the planning commission and then brought to the city commission? Versus, I mean, and again.
So Dr. Cooper and the neighborhood, when they came to that first meeting, to that first neighborhood meeting, they said, after they asked all the questions of
hey,
Charlie, turn the lights back on.
It's going to happen to me here pretty soon too, Preston.
After they asked all the questions of how did it happen,
I think that's your cue,
I have no idea what just happened.
We're over. Let's just have y'all come back to us, okay?
Yeah, so it forgive me, but
that's kind of like the shepherd's crook or the gong. When the light goes off, it's like, hey, you're done. On to the next act.
No, but I mean, we still see it. But anyways, so why would it come to us instead of the planning commission for consideration?
Because at that first meeting, one of the things that they is, I'm trying to be respectful of different folks and put things professionally, but I'm just going to be blunt here. They demanded that they have an option for what to do, and so I was responding to them.
And Preston, can I interrupt? Would that be because the planning commission can't initiate a rezoning? The city commission can.
The planning commission can initiate a rezoning.
Okay.
They can.
But I guess my reaction is if they are that, or they have that capability, send it to them first.
Sure, I'll be happy to. What they wanted to do was they
wanted pressure
were so
on.
concerned that they wanted to start all the way at the top.
Yes.
And so that's what the resolution does. The resolution would just simply say, from a city commission perspective, we're even willing to consider it. We're even willing to just hear it.
I'm willing to hear it after the planning commission does. That's just my personal thing.
Right. But based on what the mayor has said, I'm happy to go back and work with Mr. Peterson. I would just provide a little advice, because no one has submitted anything for the official agenda. They are asking really you to consider something based on public comment session. So I would not recommend having a public hearing unless there is some official case. And so you have no case in front of you. So there wouldn't be a public hearing, so to speak. What they've done by submitting this through Dr. Cooper is they've provided that, if that makes sense.
Since there's nothing time sensitive about this, and not as a means of just delaying the issue, but at this late point, let us get a recommendation put together and before you at your first meeting in January. And you all can, at that point in time, decide if you want to support a resolution to begin the rezoning or not. And if the answer should be no, you can always include language that you're going to send this down to the planning commission and let them take the initial consideration as to whether or not to start the rezoning. But we'll have you a recommendation in your packet that goes out in preceding your first meeting in January.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on that? Okay, thank you, Preston, and thank you, Pete, on that. Yep. All right.
Charlie?
We are 8:30, folks, 2.5 hours. Go ahead, Charlie.
You're muted, Charlie.
Can you hear me now? I got you. Can you hear? Okay, sorry. The last item listed by Pete was board appointments, and Pete can expound on that. But you basically, on the agenda, you have, of course, item 6.1, which is consider appointing representatives from the city commission to various boards and committees as per the various bylaws and governing authority that's stated. And there's a 12. And Pete, I stand corrected. There may be even a third. Is the Board of Equalization one of those that is typically on this list too? I don't see it here, but I'm just asking. But there's 12 boards, beginning with animal control and ending with the Washington County Economic Development Council, that typically there's city commission representatives on that board. And then at the end of the agenda is for January. It's just a listing of various upcoming appointments for various citizen boards that we call that, Golf Advisory Board, Zoning Commission, Housing and Community Development Board, Industrial Development, Housing Authority, Board of Building Codes and Dwelling Standards and Review, and the Civil Service Commission. Those are on the now semi-annual appointment cycle. We have a number of boards that are appointed in January or for effective January, and another balance of boards that are appointed effective in July. So this is for information at the end of your agenda. But item 6.1 is listed as an action item. Certainly that's for your consideration. And I know that Commissioner Murphy, he probably has some questions about some of the boards, what they mean, and our staff can certainly provide information on that if you don't have that full explanation before you.
Well, I think the rest of us were looking to appoint Commissioner Murphy basically to all 12 of them, just so he could really get into it and kind of get his feet wet. Yeah. Like a church meeting. If you weren't there, you're the chairman.
So you're going to go on video mute here in a minute, aren't you, Aaron?
I'm here, Joe.
Okay. All right, commissioners, how do y'all want to handle this? Are you ready to do it tonight? You want to wait till January to do this, or?
Well, I had a question.
I heard some things from some people, but
so
not
the
all.
6.1 list, those are commission appointments, but like the MTPO assumes that the mayor goes. Are any of the others expressly designated as the mayor, or is everything else on the list as we choose to appoint someone?
Well, I could explain, I guess to start with, and Bob can jump in on the animal control. Animal control is Johnson City resident and the city manager or designee. And of course, Jenny serves as well as Bob Wilson, currently on that board now.
Mm-hmm.
The Bright Ridge Board of Directors is a member of the governing body or the city manager. The Convention and Visitors Bureau, as you know, is now being reorganized, and that is 2 representatives from the city, including the city manager or his designee, as well as the city commissioner. The East Tennessee Railroad Authority is the Johnson City mayor or designee. And just for Commissioner Murphy's benefit, I won't take a whole lot of time. That is basically, it is through Tennessee Code annotated. It's a organized. Now it's comprised of Washington County and City of Johnson City representatives, and the railroad receives tax money, diesel fuel tax money, to distribute for track improvements in Johnson City. So that meets rarely, usually once a year at best, and they basically, their sole mission for the most part is to any track improvements or crossings where there needs to be some improvements. There's funds through the state to provide for that. So that's the purpose of that board. And the MPO is transportation is Johnson City mayor. Johnson City Development Authority is the city commissioner. The public library has a city commissioner on there. as well as the planning commission has a city commissioner and the Johnson City mayor or designee can be on that planning commission. The school facilities committee, and Pete, you probably know more about this than I do. I know we've had 2 city commissioners on there traditionally, but I know that board sort of is flexible from time to time. And the Tri-City Airport has three members representing the city of Johnson City, and currently Pete, John Smith, and Dan Mahoney are representatives on that board. And the Washington County Economic Development Council has the city manager of Johnson City, and I think so. Basically, these are either you're designating somebody or you're designating one of yourselves to be on those boards as a general rule.
I would point out that none of those boards are going to meet before January. So if you want to make those appointments at this meeting, that's great. If for some reason you don't make all of those choices and appointments until your first meeting in January, it's not going to impact any of those boards. None of them are going to meet over the Christmas holiday.
Just one correction, if I may. At the last meeting, the commission appointed a temporary board, interim board for the CVB. So that's one you can take off this list, and then that full appointment will be made next July.
Okay, good. Do we have Todd, did you kind of transition to the temporary board? Are you on that?
They talked to me about it, but I wasn't officially listed on their lists. So I don't know if they're still planning on my being on that or not.
Okay. I can't recall even who was on that list. I mean, it's impressive. Andy Marquardt, that's who I can remember.
Yeah. I did print out a copy for everybody in color of this one and of all the matrix for the other people. It's in your box here at City Hall if you want to pick that up, because that's a whole lot easier to keep up with than trying to go scroll down through some of that.
So you're talking about on the citizen appointments to the
our appointments, and then the different one for all the city appointments. So
great. All right. Thank you. All right, folks, what's your pleasure?
I'll speak up. I mean, and again, not to sway, but just to give my opinion. If we can just get through Thursday, and since several of these are either a mayoral or a position or appointment by what we've heard, let's get through Thursday, and then maybe the second meeting we knock out the rest of it. I mean, but again, I'm not like held or bent on that. So what's everybody else's thoughts?
Yeah. I think one, because of a vacancy that we really need to pay some attention to, is the Planning Commission. And so certainly we need to think of who on the commission would like to go over to the Planning Commission.
And as far as Planning Commission, have we filled the county seat as well? Are we talking? I mean, I know this is separate, but in effect, we're down 2 people at this point, or did we fill that position for the county seat?
There is an interest expressed by Uwe Rode, who qualifies as a Washington County resident within the Planning Commission jurisdiction. He is the only one, and I think that's lined up for you all to make. The first meeting in January is when I think the citizen appointments are scheduled currently.
Thank you.
Right. And Uwe was on the Planning Commission at one time, I believe.
Yeah,
he was.
Yeah, he was when I was on him. I'm pretty sure. So, Aaron, have you given these any thoughts?
Yes, there are 3 that I'm interested in. I'll share them if you want to hear.
Okay.
I'm interested in the Conventions and Visitors Bureau, East Tennessee Railroad Authority, and the Washington County Economic Development Council.
Okay. Do we just want to go around the horn and see who wants to do what, or do you want to do it later? Somebody provide some guidance.
I think there would be value in knocking out as much of this list as we could, simply because we have so many citizen appointments coming on the docket at the first meeting of January, that as many of these as are easy to dispense with just reduces that list, is my 2 cents worth. I am presently serving on the Johnson City Development Authority and the Tax Increment Funding Advisory Board. And I'm happy to continue on both of those if that's the desire of the balance of the commission, which would be, I guess, item, sorry, is it 6 and 10?
Okay.
Yeah, well, Todd, you've not spoken on this, so I'll be quiet and let you speak first.
I would like to continue on the Conventions and Visitors Bureau, especially since it's breaking away, and I help kind of work with that on getting away from the chamber and getting them started. So I'd like to do that. I am not scared of the Planning Commission, but their hours are not very conducive with when I could get to meetings. That would be my biggest worry, and I hate for them to change their hours for one person. So,
yeah, they start usually at 5 o'clock in a pre-meeting. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
On a Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, and I start at Science Hill at 7 in the morning, and I go to clinic at 8:30, and I get done hopefully by 5:30 or 6.
Well,
So
Mike,
that's
you probably have some sport events on Tuesday.
yeah, Tuesday evenings are basketball nights. So it's like I said, if somebody else could do that, that would sure be good. But I know we need somebody that has experience on that. So.
Well,
I did want to add one thing. I didn't know John changed his name to GJ Swatzel on here as our city commissioner on the library board.
And so, you know, when I got on the public library board, they changed their meeting date, which happened to coincide with my board of directors meeting for my employer. And so I had to put somebody in as my appointment. And so I've been able to change my board meeting. And so if nobody else has interest in or a strong desire for public library, I'd be happy to get back on that. And they're really great about efficiency of making a meeting into an hour, and they meet at like 4:30, and so I can make that happen. They're just down the street from me. But so, whoop, I just pressed a Mitchell. But and now I've got a train coming by, so I don't know if you can hear me or not. Charlie, what are you doing to me?
Have you heard about the quiet zone? We could make that stop.
You got $10,000, Joe?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, Pete does anytime there's something to spend money on.
So I'm waving. So my interest would be, my top priorities would be, Bright Ridge, public library, and then there are, I'm totally fine with not being on the railroad authority. Joe, I'm glad, because we had what would have been 2 city commissioners with Aaron being on the JCD. I'm fine with, you staying on there, I think is actually great because that keeps that, consistency. And Todd and Aaron, with you all on the CVB, kind of like what Jenny was with Bright Ridge transition. I think, it probably is a good idea to keep Todd in there for that transition period that they're going through. But, whatever y'all, talk out.
Let me ask the question about Aaron's on the JCDA right now that he's a commissioner. Will you stay on the JCDA, or, we'll have one commissioner on there?
That's a good question.
I don't know the answer to it. Pete, do you?
Well,
I would
Never
need to
been in a situation like this.
I would need to look at the bylaws, Mayor, because some of those bylaws are specific about the number of elected commissioners that can serve on some of those boards. So if you would let us send an email out tomorrow after review of those bylaws.
Yeah.
Charlie, that sounds like a great job for you. Please.
After you're done turning off Preston's lights, don't let this interfere with turning off Preston's lights.
Okay.
So Mayor, can I just run through the list? I know you have expressed a willingness on animal control, and I haven't heard anybody else say anything about that. So one seems like a straightforward situation. Bright Ridge Board of Directors, I've heard 2 people. CVB, I've heard 2 people. But if I'm not mistaken, the bylaws we just approved could be 2 commissioners if the city manager didn't go. If am I hearing that right, Pete?
Yes.
Actually, the bylaws provided for a 6-member interim board, and then beginning July 1st would be the full board of 9 members,
right?
2 of which are city commission appointments. That was the intention.
Right, and I'm jumping ahead. So, but I mean, we could deal with these appointments right now and put a person or 2 in the queue, even if they didn't go to a meeting for 5 months. East Tennessee Railroad, I've heard John is currently doing it, but Aaron is interested. MTPO is a mayoral position. JCDA, I would do, and I haven't heard anybody willing to arm wrestle me for it. Public Library is John. Planning Commission sounded a little bit up for grabs still. School Facilities, is that the committee that tends to look at healthcare? Isn't it school and health facilities, or is this just school facilities?
No, it's really talking about school issues, capital.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, so we haven't had anybody. TIF, I've said, and I haven't heard anybody else. Tri-Cities Airport, we've got constituted. Because actually, are any of those seats up?
No.
So we don't even have a spot to fill there. And then WCEDC.
That's
Pete,
the 1101. That's 1101, isn't it, Pete? And
yes,
is there a statutory appointment to that on?
Not as long as you have representation.
Okay.
So for the benefit of those who may not know, public chat 1101 refers to public chapter 1101 of the Tennessee Code that's dealing with, it deals with a whole bunch of things, but includes urban growth. There's a whole bunch of stuff in 1101. Pete, is there anything worth saying on that for Aaron's benefit, who may have never encountered that?
Oh, it deals with annexation, de-annexation, urban growth boundaries, urban service boundaries. Aaron, that's probably a 20-minute conversation you and I need to have, because that's a pretty detailed conversation.
How often do they meet?
WCEDC, they meet once a quarter, usually for about 30 or 40 minutes, if that.
Okay. So the school facility, Pete, you go to that, and
it's 2 school board members, 2 city commissioners, and staff, which is usually me, Janet, sometimes Charlie. It's schools finance, Steve Barnett, Joe Barnes usually comes, Randy Trivet comes, but the composition is 2 elected officials from general government and 2 from school board, and then the Steve Barnett and I.
So are we filling 2 seats on that one? Or just
yeah,
one?
I don't think we've had anybody going officially this year. And generally on the school side, it's the chair, the board chair, and then one other board member.
Kathy's always had a real interest. She's been at those things for seems like 20 years. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, if there's 2 commission seats on that, Jenny, I don't know how you feel. I'm not trying to volunteer you, but you and I can do that one.
Okay. Well, I'm going to suggest something here in just a minute. Okay, I'll certainly stay with animal control. Certainly my intention was to stay on the Bright Ridge board. I'm in a 4-year term, and being the chair of the business development committee, we are in the throes of our next solar farm. So I'll tell you what, John, I will be glad to talk with you about that. Let's spend some time outside of this meeting. We'll discuss it. If I do that, I will consider going back over to the planning commission, but it's going to cost you.
But they do need you. I can promise you.
Well, I do know they're interested in, and if planning commissioners are listening to it, it's not anything other than the time, and the intensity of the planning commission. But I do know with them working on the bridge plan and more comprehensive planning role that they would like to have somebody who's worked with our strategic plan as well and how these things get melded together. And so they're not off here and we're off here. And they certainly want to take a bigger role in advancing the purpose and use of that board as the city looks ahead. Did I just say that? Oh. Okay. But let's see, the animal control board meets on Tuesday too. So I don't know how we'll work all that out, but okay. So John, you and I plan to talk.
Sure.
All right. So did we catch them all? I think we did.
I have them down here. So Jenny's animal control, Bright Ridge is Jenny or John when they work that out. CVB, maybe me for now, and maybe myself and Aaron come July. Railroad would be Aaron, if that's all right with John.
Yep.
The mayor is on the Metropolitan Transportation. JCDA would still be Joe. Libraries, John. Regional planning sounds like maybe Jenny. School facilities, we're going to work that out. TIF is Joe. The airport we already have, and WCEDC is the city manager and maybe Aaron, depending on how that works out. Is that?
Now, let me add to, I wanted to get it on the agenda tonight, but of course, we've all decided it's going to take more discussion, but we've got to get started someplace, is the addition of a 13th committee that whatever the name turns out to be, that is really stems out of the conversations that have been going on after our protests this summer. A lot of work has been done. Pete and Keisha and Chief and myself and Adam Dixon and all have spent many hours, working on these things. And we want to look at how we can get to go from reactive to those kind of things to a proactive and to get more input into city government from our minority communities. Certainly, Dr. Nolan stepped up this past year in creating his diversity and inclusion department and making a VP position with Dr. Johnson. And I think we can do some really good things for our community if we get the right people appointed to this community to really look at those issues that we really need to be looking at and help us become a stronger city. So you have a copy of a draft version of that, and would really like to try to get it on, whether you want to do a workshop around it or what, or you may have another suggestion on how to deal with these issues, but we can't let it drop. So I will throw that out there. And okay, so I think we have at least about 90% of this completed, and we'll finish it up in January. I did add, since we'll be reorganizing at our meeting on Thursday night, some other things that are required of the mayor, and I will be more than happy to share my journal with anybody. I mean, obviously, this has not been an ordinary year, and it's not going to be for, probably another 6 months, I would imagine. So there's a lot of demands on this position that are outside the boundaries of ceremonial. But the First Tennessee Development District is a big time consumer, both on the executive committee and the foundation. And the Johnson City Mayor is a part of that executive committee. It meets somewhere between 4 and 6 times a year. There's also a seat on the Carter County Economic Development Council, and there probably should be one on Sullivan County that I did attend. And it was a good thing to attend, particularly when Mayor Barnett was there. It helped a lot with our relationships. There's the regionalism piece that you'll also be a part of, and many other things that are ad hoc calls to want the mayor present. So as we move down that road, I want to thank everyone for your support in these last 2 years that you've given me. Like I said, it hasn't been normal times. I guess Charles Dickens' words, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. So the sesquicentennial year was the best of times, and it was great. And please get over and see that playground. Oh my gosh, it is. And by the way, I took pictures yesterday and sent it to Don Raines, who was in the COVID unit, and he immediately texted back and just was so excited and happy to see that. But it is one of a kind place. Anyway, just want to thank y'all for your support. It's been a real privilege to not only work with you during this period of time, and I'm sure there's plenty of times when you could have killed me and knocked me over the head, but there are many times we sometimes just have to move forward and address the needs of the community. And I think that's what has happened this year. And, but it's not over yet. And one of the things I did find out, and I may have shared this with some of you, but while our form of government has a ceremonial mayor, in times where it's very stressful, like we've been through, the word mayor is spelled the same way in front of your name as it is the county mayor's name or the mayor of Knoxville or Nashville or New York City. And when people need comfort and at least someone to try to help them get through these very stressful times, they call. And so it's been a lot. So that's kind of why a couple of weeks ago, I was hoping our commission would step forward. And John, I think you addressed this in your email today. They want to hear from their elected leaders. And, this is not over. And then, the next big hurdle is going to be trying to convince our community to take the vaccine. So I've always felt from my experience here, if you can keep your community united, we can solve anything. And probably the biggest disappointment as I leave in this role is the fact that our community is not necessarily united. We've had the protests from the summer. We have people who, think all this COVID stuff is a hoax and who are working hard. I mean, we were on national TV 3 or 4 days ago, twice in one day, one for the morgue, which they considered a hoax and a fake and Ballard's way of scaring everybody to death. And then being the 7th leading city in the nation, of where the number of cases are just accelerating. And then, oh, by the way, the preacher from Wilson County who was, really made Tennessee look good. So anyway, that's it. And I appreciate everybody's support and look forward to the reorganization for us to move ahead. We have a lot of work next year. And I will certainly make the commitment that in my remaining 2 years, I'll work as hard as I have in the one since 2013. So anyway, thank you.
Can I say one more thing? Just Pete, if you could, I don't know if we can do it for Thursday, but Jenna Hutchins, I don't know if y'all are keeping up with her, but
No, she's running too fast.
Yeah,
I can't keep up with her.
She's a junior at Science Hill and has set 3 or 4 now national records. And this last one was the national high school record for a 5K on a track outdoors. And she'd never run on a track in a 5K before. And she broke the national record, not only national record for under 18, but also under 20 American junior outdoor record. And she's only a few seconds away from Olympic trial qualifying as a junior in high school. So we really need to get a proclamation out and just make sure we're recognizing her sometime in the near future.
Yeah, Todd,
And then it sounds
did
like
one
we need to
last.
keep it in a Word document because we'll just keep refreshing it as she keeps hitting new.
That was what Jenny was about to talk to.
Yeah, I wonder if there's something different we could do, because I did a proclamation last year. She came over, and also I've written 2 letters for her in support of her nomination for I think it's the Gatorade National
Athlete of the Year.
Yeah, and she's won it. I mean, she won it last year. I suspect she'll probably win it this year, because it's not just her athletic ability; it's her scholastic and
right.
And I mean, she's just an amazing person.
Yeah,
So
I know
if
we've
there's
done one
something
before, but it's hard not to recognize that, somebody
Yeah.
setting national records in our town.
Maybe I don't know if y'all remember, we did this little thing that's called Mountain Movers that has our logo and everything on it. It's a little acrylic thing that we might present her with, something like that for extraordinary accomplishment. And then she can start adding it with her trophies or something. But maybe let's get with Keisha, Pete, and see what unique thing we could possibly do for her.
Yes, ma'am.
And to bring it back to Jenny's comments, I know it's 9 o'clock and I wasn't expecting that, but Jenny, your comments a minute ago, really kind of touched me in that, I mean, you and I campaigned together 2 years ago when we got on this commission, or you were already on when you got reelected and I came on. The world was a totally different place, and our vision as a commission, as individuals sitting on this commission, was totally different than, and also Pete as in assistant city managers, was totally different than what we sit here electronically contemplating and dealing with. It was truly exciting, and we were working on some really great things. It almost feels like the rug was pulled out from under us on a lot of things that we had rolling. And Aaron is a pastor, and I watched some of his sermons online, and he did a series, I think on Ecclesiastes, where there's a time and a place for every season, for every time, and over this past year especially, I don't think, all of us could have rose to the occasion, but I'm so thankful that you were our mayor and were able to connect with people in the way you did. And I think God puts us in places in the right time to really highlight our abilities to make things better in this world, and truly appreciate everything you've done in that role. And you're right, regardless of what our charters say of a mayor, the general public doesn't necessarily recognize that. And you've done a phenomenal job as mayor. And, I think we're all appreciative of that. And I personally thank you for what you've done and the time and the commitment you've put forward. And so, I do want to recognize that. And, hopefully we can do something a little bit more in the future at an official city commission meeting rather than a workshop. But you've done a great job, and so many people across so many different walks of life and perspectives of thinking have communicated that, and you should be honored and happy with the work you've done in this particular role. And I'm glad that I've been honored to serve with you, and that I'll be able to continue to serve with you over the next 2 years, because you've done great things. I've learned a lot from you, and continue to hope to learn even more. And it's been a great thing. And regardless of the unexpected things that we've had to face and the challenges that we've had to meet, you've done a great job. Our commission, our city has done a great job. And I have faith that we'll be able to continue moving forward and going all out.
John, thank you. I appreciate that. When I move back to my commission seat, it will give me more time just to be a thorn in everybody's side. So don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. But thank you. All right, we just a couple other things, Pete. I think the bridge contract is probably expiring in December. And I think if everybody wants to weigh in, we would really like to stay with this group. They've been so very beneficial to us and inclusive, keep us up to speed on what's going on federally and at the state level. And I think maybe even tomorrow we have a meeting with some recommendations for you and myself to look at our next appropriation ask from Nashville that we'll bring back to the commission, trying to get a strategy in place there. And they're certainly optimistic that some of the funding that got cut last year, like our $5 million, there's enough feeling about that in Nashville that some of that might get restored. So we need to not sit on the sideline and go for it, but what, and everybody needs to kind of weigh in on what that would look like. And we know that the governor had just a really great affinity for that project with the courthouse on Ash Street. But if we go back for some money on that, Pete, we probably need to spend a little bit more time with the county commission so that they don't feel like we went behind their back to get $5 million for one of their buildings. But we certainly have a lot of investment, a lot of.
In our defense, we did that on their building, that on more than one occasion they had said, well, if you've got the money, you can have it. So we went and found the money.
But
I would echo.
Is that a fair assessment on bridge?
I would echo the mayor's comment on bridge, that I think, we have to recognize there's a new reality in Nashville and there's a new reality in DC. And I think bridge has proven to be, certainly helpful to the degree the last 6 to 12 months have allowed them to be. And I would like to give them a little more opportunity to work in that direction.
I agree. I would chime in on that also. I think we've gotten a good relationship with them, and I think we're kind of lucky we got on the ground floor, because I think they're going to attract a lot more people to hire their services. So I think we should stick with them for a little while longer and see what they can do.
I agree.
And Aaron, this is just, you may not be familiar with even what we're talking about here, but Bridge Public Affairs is a kind of consulting lobby group that we started using this year, who helped us a lot through our strategic planning process, as well as some legislative issues that we had. And actually, we put a request in through some of their help on getting things set up, and we requested a $5 million appropriation from the governor to help redo the Ash Street Courthouse over on West Walnut. And we thought we might get $1 million or $2 million. And lo and behold, he announces $5 million grant, and then COVID hit. So that would have been a huge, huge investment in West Walnut Street in the corridor over there. And so what I was talking about just a minute ago was to go back and request that funding again at some level. Good group of people. Most of them are former staffers for Senator Bob Corker, so they know the political climate well, both in Washington and Nashville. Okay, folks, is there anything else? Oh, the Tri-City legislation, we didn't even talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
Are we on any kind of quick deadline, Bob? You're on mute.
All right. Yes. Well, I mean, Bristol reviewed this with their city council, I guess the first week of September, first full week. Kingsport will be taking it up, I guess tomorrow. So it would, to keep us on track, it would be good if we can do this. I think you saw in Teet's email response, we don't see the Nashville trip coming up just for all the conditions. We are going to try to set something up to meet with our legislators sometime early January. In a nutshell, the policy didn't change a lot from last year, but there are two big changes in it. If I can just quickly call your attention, City of Bristol wanted to add a section to, and this was it was a House bill that came up, a House and Senate bill last year. It did not get out of, it was not approved, so if it comes up, it will have to start as new legislation. But it would give industrial development boards, this is the proposed legislation, in certain counties, the ability to provide incentives to promote development of single-family housing. In the bill, it specifically addressed Tier 3 and Tier 4 counties. Sullivan and Washington are Tier 2 counties. And the tiers kind of depends on your economic financial condition. In Johnson City, we have a long policy of promoting development with our water and sewer pipe, where we actually purchase the pipe for the development, which has been good for the city. We control the type of material going in the ground, and it's good for the developer. If you in the write-up, we feel like that we're not really sure how this is really going to promote housing. In our opinion, if there's a market for housing, they're going to build the housing, and it will be built. This to us seems like it's just helping out the developer or the builder. It doesn't help the homeowner out any. And so we really don't see this as a good idea for us here. We're giving up property tax somehow in this. And if the market's there, the belief is that they will build the houses, or they'll do the development.
Bob, did this stem from what they tried to do in Kingsport about 3 years ago, but trying to keep the Eastman executives in Kingsport instead of coming here? And they were providing, Pete, you probably know about that. You know, they were providing some pretty big incentives to developers to build very expensive homes over there to try to keep people in Kingsport.
I think you nailed it. The legislation that was proposed last session dealt with small, rural, more financially challenged counties as being eligible to do this. It didn't pass. Kingsport and Bristol have jumped on this very heavily. They're extremely supportive of it. And in conjunction with that, they both have Well, for example, I think Bristol has waived tap fees for like 90 days to try to stimulate some single-family housing starts. Bristol and Kingsport are definitely energized behind getting this approved. And it would be my opinion in that they feel like they're falling, that they need an advantage to draw additional residential development in their communities. I'm not real sure. I'm like Bob, I'm not sure how it's going to work. If you're going to do a tax break for a home builder, well, they're only going to own that property for probably less than 12 months, and they're going to have something built on it, and it goes to the eventual buyer. Well, how does that incentive carry over once the house is built and sold? I don't understand that. The comments that we regularly hear are that the demand for housing far exceeds the capacity of development community to get them built. I don't think there's a need for incentives to residential housing in Johnson City and Washington County. The real need for addressing housing problems in Washington County is to get more tradespeople building houses. That's the problem here.
And this is again, a detail of our broader legislative agenda that we would customarily have taken to Nashville in later January, or actually early February, isn't it?
Mid-January to early February, yes, or somewhere in that time frame.
So this is one piece of a proposal we normally bring that, as Bob alluded to, has a lot of components those of us returning have seen before. We don't need to untangle this knot at 9:15 on Monday night right now, do we?
Not necessarily. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the rest of that agenda is 99% carryover from previous years.
That's correct. There were only 2 additional items. Now, just as information, it's been the practice of the 3 cities that, and there's been things in the past that one city would want to put in there and another one would not want to do that. And the gentleman's agreement we've had is that if any city is opposed to an item, that it would be, and they pass it without that item would be pulled. But then those other cities are obviously free to go ahead and pursue it on their own. But it
Let me ask this question. If we don't say anything about it and let it go through, we don't have to participate in anything at all, do we?
That's correct.
Or would there be any merit if it did go through that the only kind of housing I can see that incentives might be applicable would be affordable housing. We have a real shortage of that in Johnson City. And maybe there's some incentives that we could direct toward developers to start building, neighborhoods with more affordable housing. So, I mean, it's just the way we might use it other than,
Well, and to Pete's point, I mean, we're working with a couple big home builders, and it's not tax incentives that are keeping houses from flying up faster. It's a shortage of concrete and framing and plumbers and electricians and available, land that's ready to start building on, regardless of the price point. That's where the weight is.
Well, I'm just trying to look at something that might be useful for us if we just go ahead and not, say we don't want that in there.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. Yep. So do we want to create the friction point with our cities, or just let it go on through and then we may be able to creatively use it?
I would also suggest to you that if the legislation is approved and other surrounding municipalities choose to use that incentive, we will be forced to also use it whether we want to or not. because the developers are going to go where the money is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Okay, well, are we voting on this Thursday night? We better untie the knot then.
Well, it's one of those things, if I may just chime in, that, you know, we never have enough tax dollars to do what we want to do. And now we're going to take some of our tax dollars and give it away. It's not a problem for us. It may be for others, but just as someone who's always looking after the revenues, I hate to give money away.
Well,
we don't have enough of it to begin with.
And I guess we need clarification because I think Pete even mentioned we're not really sure, well, what kind of tax, deferment or concession are we making if it's to the builder who within 6, 9, 12 months or even prior to even completing the house sells it. So, and again, just to be blunt, fair with this, I need to read over it again to see exactly what they're talking about in concessions, because if it's something that ends up being a reduction in closing costs for, a home buyer, maybe that's a good thing. If they end up being on the tax roll right after that, I mean, if we're talking about, again, 6 to 18 months worth of concession on, a few houses, that I don't know that that's a deal killer, but at the same time, I guess I need to look at it again before Thursday.
The legislation was very brief. There was not very much detail. It would go through the IDB, and that's about all it says, that the IDB can give concessions to promote residential development. So I don't think it would get into the closing aspect of it. Typically, the house, there's always a delay when the house is finished before it gets on the tax roll. So it's a good question about the actual mechanics of how that would actually get in the process. I don't know that anybody actually has the answer to that. But typically the IDB could defer taxes up to a set number of years. And it sounds like the legislation is broad enough that each individual IDB could set that limit or set that percentage. You could do a percentage of taxes, you could do the whole amount, you could have a graduated scale. It's very broad legislation.
Well, and we definitely don't want any more tax loopholes.
To be honest, what will happen, this is going to be entered as a very broad brush bill, and the home builders lobby and the realtors lobby are going to put the details to it as it moves through the committees in the legislature. I mean, that's the real answer on how this thing's going to be crafted. So until it gets started through the system of committees, I don't think anybody's got a real feel. And I would remind you that the home builders and the realtors lobby are two of the stronger lobbies in Nashville.
Well, and Pete, I think that's a great point, and I appreciate that clarification, and that kind of ties us back to Bridge or even Sunny, to where a lot of times I think over the years being involved in public service, those who actually hand the bill to the legislators get what they want. And so it may be something where maybe, we craft something to kind of set those guidelines, and then everybody else has to work around that or lobby around it. So maybe we could work on something that, and again, it may be something where we just want to not be in favor of it at all, but it may be something where, we say, we got to have some guidelines that, are across the board, regionally or statewide, as far as what these limits can be, instead of allowing too much freedom one way or the other. and freedom's probably the wrong word to use, but there needs to be consistency.
Yes, sir.
I'm definitely for the smoking thing in there. You can count on me for that one.
Oh, and
There's also a section,
great.
Sorry, John.
No, you're fine. Sorry.
There's also a section that would allow the continuation of electronic meetings. And that would, the way it's proposed is it would give each governing body the authority to use them if there were certain situations that were met. It wouldn't just be a continuation forever. I don't think that would be it, but if you had emergency situations or something that was particular to your city or county, that you could revert to that, it would be a local call and not the governor's call.
So Pete, I noticed the one, the cap on recovery for medical bills and tort suits. That's our case, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions or comments on the legislative agenda? So you'll be presenting it Thursday night, Bob, for a vote?
Unless I hear otherwise.
Okay. So everybody take the chance and take some time, like John says, and let's really make sure we're good with this. That kind of brings up our other thing with our new 2 representatives. And I ran into Rebecca at a ribbon cutting last week, and they do want to come over and talk with us first chance, or at least by Zoom. So maybe good to try to get that together, and it could revolve around this legislative piece here, and then along with some other careabouts that we have in Johnson City.
And
would you all want to do that at your next agenda review meeting?
That would be January well, they may be headed down to Nashville. When is that? January what?
It's like January the 3rd. That's not the week they'll be going to Nashville, I don't think.
Okay.
They'll probably go down the 10th.
Yeah, we could see if they're available and try to keep it, a short agenda that night, so we can have that discussion. I know they're getting hit with everything, and our school board had them over last week. And I think they had some pretty specific discussions about school funding. And there's an initiative right now from the county Hugh committee to try to get the city and county at least talking about school funding.
All they got to do is write us a check. We'll be happy.
Okay. Aaron, I promise you our meetings really do not go this long. This is I thought for my last meeting,
your liar pants on fire.
Hey, but seriously, on top of what Jenny mentioned about that, with the future community board appointments, just recommend everybody taking a look at that list and reaching out to those who have applied to, call them, email them, set some time aside so that we're prepared to make appointments in January.
And on that topic, could I ask, Pete, would you confirm with Julia, in that matrix, it looks like we have identified applicants and a first choice, and sometimes applicants and a second choice. But I think, at least in my mind, the initial concept of this broader application cycle was to say, if you're willing to serve, tell us what your broad interest areas are. And you may not get on the planning commission, but you might get on the BZA, or you might get on the dwelling standards, or you might end up on the, fill in the blank. And so I'm aware of like one applicant who's only identified one preference. I don't know that there's any chance that that applicant can get onto that one preference, but because they haven't marked any of the others, I'm not sure how to read that. Have we kind of precluded that? So if we could just figure out how we're asking so that we get volunteers willing to serve in the broadest possible way.
It's my understanding everyone is asked to list any board that you would have any willingness or interest in serving on.
And so that matrix, most people are only telling us one thing.
if I recall correctly, there were a lot of people had 2 and 3 choices on there.
Okay, well, I just noticed several that only had 1 or 2, and they were kind of in the wrong categories, because it's like, well, everybody wants to be on fill in the blank.
But we'll double check with Julia in the morning.
Okay.
All right, so everybody be ready. Do you think we want to do it the first or second meeting in January, the board appointment?
Yeah,
We need time to call these people if need be. Yeah.
My hope is that we can do it in one meeting, but again, this is still a new process. It's only our second time with a new set of, or totally separate set of committees. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we have to break it up, but it'd be great.
I think the key, John, is prep work for sure. Really knowing these. So is there anything else tonight? Any final words? I will share one final thing with y'all. I told Pete this today and he said, I think he was in misbelief. I was cooking dinner last night, Sunday night, and my phone rings and I look down at the ID and it says Brian Davenport. And I'm going like, what? This is crazy. On Sunday night, something must really, really be wrong. But he just called to say thank you. He had his family down to Founders Park and they'd gone through the Christmas trees. And he was just blown away with it. And he said, I just had to take the time to call. And I tell you, I've gotten a lot of feedback on the park. And it is just one of those places when things are, as challenging as they are right now, it's just a few minutes of time where people can kind of smile and be with their families and walk through and the quietness of it. The only thing we need is music. So maybe next year we'll have Christmas music playing at the same time, but it is well visited. And I think a lot of out of city people coming. I've been noticing cars in the parking lots with tags from all over. So it's a big hit.
And that's worth noting that the staff and Public Works did a considerable amount of effort. 66 trees don't purchase themselves, don't stand themselves up, and don't string themselves with lights. And that's to the credit of our staff, who don't have their names on the plaques in front of the trees, but are the only reason those trees are standing.
That's exactly right. They've gone out of the way. I mentioned that in the night we dedicated it on TV anyway. But
yeah, I was so cold, my teeth were rattling from the shivering, so I didn't hear anything you said.
Yeah, no, and maybe there's something we should do. I'm sure it costs the city a lot more than we ever intended, but maybe next year we can plan the financials in a little bit different way so that, the Blue Plum's the one who's benefited from all of it. They sold the trees to businesses who, like in one day they were gone. We could have done twice as many trees and sold them all, but yeah. So we got to build in the price of the cost of the trees probably next year. Anyway, good thing. Merry Christmas, everybody. Oh, we'll see you Thursday night. So anyway, take care.